Hi and welcome. This is the Superhomes 2030 final conference. For those who don't know me, I am Irene Gea and I am an EU project manager here at the HPA. And well, today I will be hosting this event. First of all, I wanted to check with the audience if they can hear me correctly, because I think my mic is on. If everything's fine, then I think it's time that we start presenting what is going to happen today. So Danai, can you pass the next slide? We have a big agenda today. It's 3 hours. So this is just introduction. So I encourage you that you grab your coffee, grab your tea, your drink, your snacks, because we have a 3 hours program today. So we will start now once I give the floor to someone else with some introductory remarks by the project officer of Superhomes, Daniela Bachner. Then we will have a presentation about the principles to follow and good practices for for affordable housing sector. And then we will have 2 presentations by Energy Cities and BEUC. And then we will have finally the presentations for Superhomes. Next slide, please. And well, the presentation of Superhomes, we will basically reveal all the secrets of the project. There will be an introduction. We will present more information about the brand development, contractor development, the finance solution, and of course the customer experience. And then of course we will also present something more related to the exploitation, because it's a project, but the project doesn't end up here. There's a life after it. And then for the end, we will have a Q&A session with the Superhomes partners. So if you have any doubts, there will be answer there. So yeah, I think next slide, Danae. So like this. Okay, perfect. And then another one slide, please. So before we start, mainly for those online, I think it's important to let you know that you can ask questions during the event. However, you won't be able to speak. So I encourage you to write them in the chat. But how to write them in the chat? I encourage you to write the name of the speaker, because like this we know who is directed to, and during the event we can try to solve your doubts. So for instance, if you have a question for me because you don't know exactly what I'm saying, you can just write Irene and then I will answer the question to the best of my abilities. Then something quite important is that we are recording this event, and I know it's 3 hours, so if you have to leave at some point or if you're joining late, that's no problem, because we will record this and then we will share it in the next couple of days in EHPA's website, social media, and then of course we will send you a personalized email so you can receive it. The slides, all the slides that we're sharing today, they will also be shared. So don't worry about it. Everything will be there for you. And now I think it's my time to present the next speaker, like the first speaker of the day. So I'm gonna try to introduce her to the best of my abilities. So Daniela is a project advisor in the Life and Energy Climate Unit in CINEA. Her main fields of activity within CINEA are project development assistance, energy efficiency finance, and energy efficiency services. Her main tasks are to support projects in achieving their objectives and guide them throughout project implementation. So Daniela, once okay, this is on, so you can take it for you, and best of luck.
Thank you. So good morning to all of you. As Irene already introduced me, so my name is Daniela Bachner. I work for the European Climate Infrastructure and Environment Executive Agency, in short CINEA. And today, if we go to the next slide, please, let's see. Yes, very good. Today, I will briefly introduce you to the policy framework, which is guiding the integrated home renovation services, or one-stop shops, in short, and what we actually do in our daily work to support these the setting up of these one-stop shops throughout Europe, and what we have in our basket for the next funding period in this respect. So if you go to the next slide, you're probably very familiar with this one. What you see here is the Fit for 55 package under the European Green Deal. So as you all probably know, the European Green Deal is the overarching strategy for the decarbonization of the European economy by 2050. And as an interim step, let's say there is the Fit for 55 package with a number of policy files which are revised. So you have the Renewable Energy Directive in there, you have the revision of the Energy Efficiency Directive in there, you have the revision of the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive in there. So there are a vast number of files which are revised and strengthened in the frame of the Fit for 55 package in order to bring us forward to achieving our climate targets. If you go to the next slide, please. I just would like to summarize these large policy ambitions we have. So I was briefly talking about the Energy Efficiency Directive revision and the Renewable Energy Directive revision. What you have in there, generally speaking, is a strengthening of our targets. So higher ambitions for renewables in our energy grids, higher ambition in the targets for energy efficiency and for saving energy. So there will be a binding target for all the member states now in the revised Energy Efficiency Directive for reducing the final energy consumption, for example. You also have a strengthening or a reinforcement of this energy efficiency first principle. You also have a stronger focus on energy poverty and consumer participation and consumer empowerment in the Energy Efficiency Directive. And last but not least, what is super relevant for us here today is you have an article dedicated to one-stop shops, which really push member states to promote and implement one-stop shop structures to enable citizens to invest in building renovation. When it comes to the Energy Performance of Buildings Directive in the draft revision, you have, for example, the gradual introduction of minimum energy performance standards also for existing buildings. So a stronger target for the existing building stock in order to renovate it. You have a definition of the deep renovation, and you also have the introduction of or the change of national building renovation plans, which before was a strategy, which becomes now a binding plan, as well as the introduction of building renovation passports in order to have a long-term vision per building on how to achieve decarbonization of the building stock. Furthermore, there's the renovation wave communication, which focuses on increasing the renovation rate across Europe from currently 1% to 2% by 2030, and to renovate 35 million buildings across the EU, as well as the Next Generation EU with the Recovery and Resilience Facility, where you have dedicated investments also for PACT, especially for climate activities. And then last but not least, you are familiar as well with the Repower EU strategy to reduce our dependency on Russian fossil fuels, and this specifically contains also a focus on accelerating the clean energy transition, for example, by a stronger implementation of heat pumps in the building sector. So you have as one of the measures in the plan, the faster rollout of heat pumps across European building stock. So, and as you know, 40% of our final energy goes into the buildings in Europe. Building renovation is absolutely crucial in order to achieve our climate targets. If you go to the next slide, you have all these ambitious policy framework there, but in reality, the situation for building owners looks more like this. So if you are in the situation to renovate a building, you are confused and overwhelmed by the decisions you should take. The reason is that most of us are not building professionals. So it's not clear where to go to, where to get the right information, which decisions to take first, and which partners to contact actually. And therefore, well, before that, maybe with these building renovations, typically it's rather small investments compared to what is interesting for financial institutions as well. So you have a couple hundred, 10,000 to 100, 200,000 euro investment maybe. So it's rather small bits and pieces, smaller projects. For the individuals, it's quite an investment, but for an institutional partner, it's relatively small investment sizes with high transaction costs. So which makes the market very atomized, very small structured, and there is a lack of turnkey solutions, as well as sometimes limited access for the citizens to the right financial instruments and solutions. And therefore, it's important to put in place these integrated home renovation services or one-stop shops for building renovation in order to provide the citizens with a solution, with an access point from the very start of the customer journey. If you go to the next slide, please. To avoid this situation here, for any private person to be stuck in this renovation project without any information and without knowledge on how to proceed and how to make the next move forward. It's important to guide then citizens throughout this renovation journey, because for most of the people, it's the first time they renovate the building. You won't build capacity as a private person because you do it once, maybe you do it again in 20 years time, but you probably forget in between the steps you should take. And therefore, for us, the solution is really to put in place integrated home renovation services. Next slide, please. Which you can compare to the kind of wedding planner for a wedding, which really walks you through the whole process, the whole planning and implementation procedure. So as you know, there are different types of integrated home renovation services, depending on the level of service, depending on the on how far in the renovation process the support is provided. I don't want to go into much detail here today. The main focus of all of these one-stop shops is really to make the decision-making for the citizens easy. So to really give the person who is about to renovate a building a hand in order to take the right decisions and in order to avoid locked-in effects by investing in measures which might not be relevant in a couple years time. So to avoid stranded investments, but also to guide them towards a deeper renovation, to really take measures which make sense in the longer perspective. The critical or the idea of these type of one-stop shops is really to coordinate, combine and integrate the services provided from already existing service providers. So from construction companies, from planners, from financial institutions which are already there on the market, but really to combine these existing offers in order to ease the process for the homeowners. Next slide, please. Here, I would like to give you a bit of an overview of the integrated home renovation services, which are already in place across Europe. This is not a complete picture. These are only the projects which have been funded under Horizon 2020 and Live Clean Energy Transition. But you can see that there is already quite a vast number of services in place, which support the residents in the respective areas in order to ease the renovation process. And the big questions, of course, are always how to move from these pilots to a generalized support, to a generalized service, how to establish long-term self-sustainability of the services, and how to build the capacity of the local actors in order to develop and operate these systems on a large scale. So to really not only have these pilots, but go from the pilots to a large scale service across the member states. And as as I have mentioned before, if you move to the next slide, please. We have been supporting, no, the next one. This is, yes, this is just a list of the points you saw before for your own further research in case you're interested in specific schemes. But what we have been doing and what we still continue to do under the Life Clean Energy Transition sub-program is to support market uptake actions. So under different topics, we really try to support projects which reduce market barriers, which roll out schemes, innovative schemes on a larger scale. So, for example, under the bullet of engaging and empowering consumers, we find projects which target energy poverty and energy communities. Under the building policy and regulatory framework, you have projects which tackle local actions, so local implementation of the regulatory framework with local authorities, local citizen organizations, and so on. Under the rolling out technology services and business models, you have, for example, energy services, projects addressing heat pumps. Under attracting private finance, you have a number of innovative financing projects which work together with financial institutions typically to really build targeted financial instruments to invest into renewables and energy efficiency. And under mobilizing local and regional investments, you find the one-stop shop projects and project development assistance, in short, PDA. So we come from the Intelligent Energy Europe program originally, and then we continued these type of activities under Horizon 2020, and now these energy efficiency, renewable energy targeted market uptake actions are now called other grants, other operating grants, and they are now under the Life Clean Energy sub-program. And my last slide goes into the current funding scheme, which is open today. So the new Life CET call opens today with a deadline on the 16th of November. We have roughly 100 million euros available, which will result in approximately 55 grants, depending on the requested amounts of the applicants. What is specific to this type of call is that it's very detailed in terms of the guidance, in terms of what we expect from our project. So it's not similar to other life sub-programs where you have a headliner and then you can come up with project ideas, but it's really very, very clearly structured in the aspects we would like the applicants to work on. So you have a very detailed, very long call topic description where you can actually find very well what you should actually come up with. For everyone who is interested, I would really encourage you to look at the funding and tender portal to have a more detailed look at the individual topics. There will also be an info day on the 1st of June virtually, where we go through all the different call topics in more detail. The success rates in the last years were relatively high, so the effort really pays off. We had a success rate of around 40% across the topic. So really it makes sense if you have a good idea, to come up with a project proposal to submit it in November, because you have good chances to get funding for your project idea. And just to conclude now, also under this year's Life CET program, there is a dedicated call topic for integrated home renovation services, because we feel that we are not yet there at this point of large-scale rollout, and it still needs public funding in order to implement these schemes, especially in these regions where there has not been any activity so far in this respect. All right. So this is it. If there are questions, just let me know. Thank you very much. Here you have our contact details in case you want to know more. We are always reachable, and the link to the call topic is in the slides. Thank you very much.
So thank you very much, Daniela, for your presentation. It's time that we move on to the next speaker. So the next speaker of today, thank you, is João Gonçalves. He's Innovation and Project Manager at Housing Europe. He leads Housing Europe Innovation Area with the aim of boosting the sharing of the latest in social technical innovations in the social housing sector, as well as influence innovation policy at EU level. João is also the coordinator of the European Affordable Housing Consortium, which is dedicated to supporting municipalities and housing providers in going the extra mile in terms of district level renovation. An urban planner by training, João brings in more than 10 years project management experience in a diversity of organizations, including a university, a consultancy, and a business association. So João, whenever you're ready, here's your microphone.
I'll have to stay here, right? All right. I think you can hear me. Okay, so I will address the social and affordable housing sector in particular, because this is what Housing Europe is working in. So maybe the next slide. So just a brief presentation of my organization. So we represent 48 national and regional federations. They themselves have 43,000 members at the European level and even beyond that. And in turn, they represent about, the last account that we did is 26 million dwellings across Europe. So this is public, social, and cooperative housing, so not the private sector. So they're they have quite a stake in the renovation wave. So we are talking about approximately 200,000 renovations every year. 40 billion investment every year as well, and 75,000 people working in those renovations. So it's quite a relevant sector in the renovation wave. And Housing Europe, basically, our main goal is to offer affordable quality housing for all in Europe. So this is why we exist. These are the countries that are members. Next slide, please. The social and affordable housing sector has, I think you probably know this, a lot of difficulties at the moment. We are talking about the need to provide enough housing to house all the people that can't afford to buy or rent their own house in their own means. So available housing enough in Europe. That housing obviously has to be affordable so that we can with a decent amount of our disposable income afford that house. And of course, with the renovation wave, the Green Deal that was explained previously, we need houses and districts to be sustainable. And of course, we had already a lot of difficulties already. So now we are compounded by more and more. So next slide. Just some idea what scenario we are facing at the moment. So the houses are getting less and less affordable, and we are talking about the private sector, obviously. We have seen an increase of 50% in the cost of houses since 2010, and 20% the cost of houses to rent since 2010 as well. Next slide. And it's not entirely the construction fault, because as we know, and especially since COVID times, and this is the yellow circle there, the red circle there, we have experienced an increase in the cost of raw materials. So it also compounding the cost of building houses. Next slide. And then we have where our sector is facing a situation a bit more closely, is that 17% of the EU population lives in houses that don't have enough quality, the right conditions to host those people. And a lot of them also spend more than is required to have a decent apartment or house to live. Next slide. And to justify my earlier statement about this new challenge being asked to the social and affordable housing sector, we have, of course, renovation wave. We have increasing targets to renovate our homes to a standard that I'm going to talk about in the next slides as well. So we have basically an inefficient building stock. Our tenants and our residents spend a lot of money just heating their homes or cooling their homes, in the case of the Caribbean countries, and we need to renovate those houses. Housing Europe has said that they will contribute with 4 million buildings renovated by 2030. This was before COVID-19, so now we are facing with a challenge to keep up with that promise, with the raw materials increasing, with the additional costs of housing. Next slide, please. So the challenge is piling up, and we had the challenge before COVID. So we have here also the infrastructure that needs the maintenance. We have removal of asbestos, climate adaptation, circularity concerns, etc. So they're all important, and this is all. It's really difficult to say that we have priorities. So each country has obviously their priorities, but in the European level, we have to respond to all this. So next slide. So in terms of response to the renovation wave and also the previous challenges, sometimes we have this idea that we should answer as quickly as possible to those challenges. And this is what the role of innovation is, and I'm the policy and the innovation director in Housing Europe. So this is what we try to influence at the European level. So we need to innovate, obviously, products, processes, methodologies that can answer those three challenges at the same time. And we can go both ways. Like we can go immediate solutions, but we also need integrated measures. And this is more or less the topic of my presentation. And most of the times we should learn from what happened in the past. So next slide. This is just an example from my country, in Portugal. I'm using this example because these towers don't exist anymore. And it's quite a reference in terms of what we did wrong in the past. So basically, these were houses that were built to just face one of the challenges, to house the people that couldn't afford their own homes. And what happened afterwards, the next slide, was that it was torn down because there were so many problems, not only regarding the building itself, but also the social conditions around that building in the neighborhood, that the situation was sustainable. So those residents were housed somewhere else, and the building, the block was torn down. And this is very costly for the social and affordable housing sector. As you can imagine, we can't repeat the same mistakes. So this is why we should be careful when we are responding to renovation wave. We can start thinking a bit longer term and think right now what we need to take into consideration to not go back to those same mistakes. So we need the three perspectives, not just one. Even though housing people is very important, but you also have to have an integrated approach. And this is actually, I was in a conference of the EIB, and I was very surprised that they also have the same concern. This is the conditions that the EIB has at the moment to provide funding for social housing providers, municipalities. In their case, it's quite a considerable amount, so it's about 25 million euros or more. And they're also asking, because they understand as well the inefficiency of the investment of the past. They're also asking for a place-based approach. They're also asking for a social mix. Just housing people will not work. They have to have sustainable planning behind it. And obviously, this also has a reflection on the financial structure of the project. So we can't just have one organization providing housing. We need a partnership, also co-financing the place-based approach. Next slide. So what we are doing at the moment, we are learning from the past, what went wrong, what went right, and we're testing strategies, tools, and linkages with other agents of change so that we can answer the three challenges at the same time in our own very modest contribution, obviously. And we are talking about integrated approaches. and district level perspective. Also because it also brings economies of scale. So this has a role on affordability. Next slide. But we are aware of as well, because Europe is such a diverse context, that no size fits all. So integrated approaches in some cases, but there are other cases where we have to have different approaches, so specific measures. So they have to have, obviously, into consideration the context of the region, not even the country. There are regions in each country that are different from each other. So we're talking about heterogeneity at European level in terms of location, climate, and housing systems. And we also should allow that the planning of those integrated approaches should be different in each context. I will try to make it a bit more practical in the next slide. So let's talk about short-term solutions. Obviously, this is a project we're also involved. We can help the residents, the tenants in social and affordable housing blocks to reduce their energy bills. So this is basically an office. This is a case from Estonia, where they have advisors that could help them decide and implement energy efficiency measures. This is quite quick and is quite useful to implement, obviously, if you have the funding like they did in Tallinn, Estonia. Next. And of course, to create self-consumption communities. This is an example from Italy. So we have, as you all know, a huge potential in the southern Europe, and I think our Mediterranean members know this, and they are trying to increase the rate of installing PV, solar thermal plants, etc., in their facilities as well. Next slide. These are short-term measures. So long-term measures, this is what we are trying to find innovative solutions, and sharing it across Europe to other housing providers and municipalities. So these require a lot of planning. So it is not really a knee-jerk solution. This case, particularly from Belgium, when you're here in Hasselt, it took 10 years for the entire process from planning to the delivery of this renovation. And in fact, for us, because we are so close to the tenants and the residents of social housing, it's a great example that you're using a lot, because it only took 9 days of on-site works. You can imagine a renovation is quite a difficult process in the social housing sector, because you have to reallocate, rehouse the tenants in some other places. And if you think the amount of people that are in the social housing association, for example, that's very difficult. It requires a lot of planning and actually a lot of budgets. It's not so easy. So basically, this example is retrofitting social housing buildings with prefabricated external cladding and energy models. So I was in one of these buildings after renovation in Lyon, and you can really feel the difference just by placing external cladding outside of the building block. You can see already the difference with the sound. It's completely a new building. And of course, there are fantastic results. So heat demand 50% less, reducing cost 80% less. So next one. This is one here in Brussels. You can visit it if you like. It's a former soap factory transformed into a social housing neighborhood. This is another example that we have, another model that we are trying to figure out, because there are a lot of, in certain regions, obviously, a lot of industrial heritage left back from other times, more industrial times. And given our need for social housing, it's an occasion to use that unused facilities. And this is quite a good project. It's very appealing aesthetically, and basically the people that are there, they can enjoy this neighborhood, also in terms of energy efficiency, but also in terms of natural materials, collective heating system, and other energy efficient and resource efficient resources. Next. This is another model that we like a lot. This is obviously a housing cooperative, so there's always this bottom-up dynamics that they have. It's not so easy to export this model to other circumstances. But basically, this housing association or this housing cooperative, they asked the architects to involve the residents. So during the planning phase, the residents were able to give feedback to the blueprints of the architects of the contractors. And what happened was quite a difference from the original plan. So basically, all the ground floor was just dedicated to community halls, to community spaces. So you have there gym, community hall, common urban gardens, and if you go there to Berlin, you see it's not just a building block; it's a community. So this is the integrated approach that we are talking about. And if you go a step further, in the next slide, you can even have more integrated approach that includes the economy side. So as you know, sustainability is not only about the environment, also about social, like the previous one, but also the economic. So in Örebro in Sweden, they had a pilot project called Home Builders. So this is quite let's call demanding social and demanding neighborhood in Örebro, Sweden. So a lot of immigrants, new immigrants coming for this region. They were out of work, and this city, they offered them the possibility to have a work experience with the Skanska, which is the contractor of this renovation. Skanska would give the mentor. This is the role of that gentleman there, so that they would have experience in not only in construction and renovation, so they would have a work placement, but also their own houses, their own homes, so they could be involved in renovating their own houses, which is quite outstanding from a buy-in perspective. Of course, this is not so simple. The main issue here is the procurement contents. We're not going into that, but it's also something that we are really trying to figure out how we can build models of these procurement processes that can be exported to other realities. Next slide. I've been telling you about specific good practices that we have found out across Europe, and this is the main object of this project. It's called European Affordable Housing Consortium, which I'm coordinating. And basically, we are trying to support the housing providers, the municipalities, but also SMEs to go a bit further in terms of their renovation practices, also to solve those three angles of the sustainability triangle. So we are considering not only the technology side, the technical side, so smart technologies, circular principles, modular renovation approaches, which shows those external cladding, but also consider people-centered models, energy communities, for example, and also co-creation and engagement practices. We are fitting a lot and vice versa with the European Bauhaus, which is the NAV over there. And of course, this is the main difficulty of this triangle, is we have to have affordable houses, we have to have livable houses that work for the residents, but also for the budget of the housing associations. Next slide, please. These are already the good practices that we have extracted across Europe. So I've talked with some of them. We are also still interviewing the responsible parties of this good practice. So some of them are still missing from that map. So we will, until the end of this year, we'll be producing this content, and at early 2024, we'll be presenting the good practices handbook and the blueprints in a conference in Brussels as well. Next slide. So the blueprints is basically trying to answer all the questions that we think are relevant to solve those three challenges that we had in the beginning. Especially how to involve residents, how and when to use modular building system, how to adopt circular approaches. This circularity is a big challenge for us. We've been trying to find a concluded example with good results, but it's been difficult so far. Obviously, the question of the renovation expenses, how to finance the renovation from the social housing perspective, aggregate renovation process at economy scale, and there are much more questions that we have, and we will try to answer them in a blueprint that we will be drafting until 2024. So next slide. At the same time, the blueprints will not only be written documents, it's actually going to be a living support program. So we are inviting the people that have led those good practices that I showed you to act as mentors for other people that would like to receive that information firsthand. Because it's very difficult for us to write a document or to even go to conference and say this is how it works, because there's a lot of details. You really have to have peer-to-peer exchanges. And we are still figuring out how this works, because the questions are so specific to each context. We will see how well they can help each other, but let's see. So we will open a further batch of slots to be supported short in the near future. So it's in our website. So if you are interested, if you have any person that it could be interesting, so you could just refer to this website. Next slide. And obviously we have all the events where we will be meeting and discussing all these issues, like the presentation that I just gave you. The next one will be in Barcelona on June 7th to 9th, and in Paris on June 21st. The Paris one will be dedicated to finance, so we'll be bringing EIB and all the other banks to see what the difficulty we are facing in terms of social housing associations, and see how they can respond to those challenges. And in Barcelona, it will all be about technology. So we're going to talk about modular, serialized renovation, all those techie considerations, and other events in the future as well. Next slide. This, again, the Social Housing Festival on June 7th and 9th. Next slide. And this is the Paris Finance Summit. Next slide as well. Oh yeah. So if you are curious about the project, you can refer to this link over here, or you can just contact me. I'm happy to answer your questions. All right. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, João. I have a question for you, actually. You presented a series of good practices, so I wanted to ask you if you actually consider the issue of replicating these good practices somewhere else.
Yeah, that's the point. So at the moment, we are trying to find those good practices, obviously the solutions from a practical point of view. And there will be two main strands of replicating those good practices. The first one will be the codified knowledge in the blueprints, and the other one, the tacit knowledge, so in the head of those architects, those social housing managers, and we are going to ask them to mentor others so that they can transfer in whatever capacity they can to replicate those practices. The replication, as far as we know, it's very difficult. So there are bits and pieces of information here, bits and pieces of information there, and that we hope that someone that wants to do similar renovation works will get that information from across the spectrum of knowledge, and do something similar in their own context. So it's replication in commas, probably.
All right. It's time for me to give space for someone else. Now it's time for me to introduce. I'll just take my notes here. It's time for introduce like the next speaker of this session, which is Guillaume Joly. Guillaume joined BEUC Energy team back in September 2020 as the Sustainable Housing Officer. He's trained as an urbanist and as a public policy designer, and he formerly worked for several local authorities in France, Région Île-de-France, Métropole Européenne de Lille, as well as for C40, a worldwide network of global cities engaged in energy transition and tackling climate change. His core expertise is on private residential retrofit and implementation. So whenever you're ready, Guillaume, here's your mic.
Hello, everyone, and thanks for the opportunity to present on the consumer's perspective. Thanks. I will present on the consumer's perspective on the one-stop shops, and also on the last study we had with BPIE on the heat pump readiness indicator, so that I will present on the consistency between those two aspects. Next slide, please. From the consumer's perspective, what are we advocating for? First, perhaps even if the scene has already been set, going back to what the consumers need, they need a clear and simple retrofit pathway. At the moment, it's overly complicated for them. Well, too much information, I would say, is available. But they also need to know they can trust the people advising them, because so many people are here with a lot of ideas, but how do I know I can trust them? Also, there are many work streams on raising awareness of consumers that they should do something about energy. I think they are pretty well aware of the things they should do, but they lack the they don't lack the technical and financial information. They lack the skills and capacity to combine it and synthesize it. Because if you want to go for a deep retrofit project that is complex, well, if you have to go through a PhD before engaging anything, it's going to be complicated. And just the trust here, you don't get a 5 points strike, you get a 15 points, because that's really what we need here. Next point. So what we are advocating for quite strongly is the rollout of one-stop shops that can endorse the complexity for people, so that it's made easier to access to retrofit. So let's not fool ourselves here. It's going to be still disruptive, but if you make it easier, a clear pathway with a bit of stronger support, then you can have people on board. And just to say, on one-stop shops, our members, the National Consumer Organization, Defense of Consumers, don't sat on their hands, because most of them implemented support for consumers already. Not as integrated as other examples, of course, but still they have been very active. Next slide. So as mentioned before, consumers need support, but it's not a one-size-fits-it-all. You need to adapt the one-stop shop services to the different profiles of consumers, because you have homeowners, you have tenants, you have landlords. In that case, between the situation between tenants and landlords, you need an impartial third party, which can be the one-stop shops in our mind. Also, depending on the housing stock, you don't provide the same support. If you have a standalone 4-facade house or a 200-unit apartment block, you definitely have a difference in the governance. So the one-stop shops need to adapt. Same thing in contrast between the urban and the rural areas. One-stop shops need to take that into account for the design. Also, what consumers need is to understand all the available funding, all the grants, subsidies, private funding. But then that's just the first step, because once you have all this information, how do you actually get the money? That's where what we advocate for is for further support in the application to the different funding sources, because we have different conditions, different timing, different energy efficiency conditions to access it. So it's here really holding the hand of people. Next. What we also advocate for is for one-stop shops to not only provide services to consumers, but also to accredited installers, because we need way more of those installers. So here the pick is with a male one, but you need to have in mind also for the opportunity of training and accreditation, female installers as well, so that you don't close the opportunity window of works. But that being said, what we also call for is for one-stop shops to provide administrative services to installers, to mirror what consumers have access to. Because once you have these installers trained, accredited, you don't want them to spend 30% of their time filling in files and paper with all the red tape we know. What we also call for is for one-stop shops to address litigation, because even if people are well-intended, even if everybody is a good professional, well, mistakes happen. So you'd better think ahead of how to address the different problems, because when something goes wrong, consumers need to know who they're going to call, like ahead, because it's a safer pathway, and perhaps it's less of a deterrent for people if they think like, I don't know if I have any issue, who I can get support from. So to drive us to the other topic of the day, the energy performance certificates. Sorry, there is a glitch here, but you get it. One-stop shops need to wrap up the technical advice, and you need consistency on this, so that people don't get different narratives of what we should do. You need consistency all across the board. So that's why we need more reliable EPCs. Next. Also, what we can say is that people and consumers will need to have to deal with a few trade-offs, although we know the big picture. We are heading for heating and cooling, decarbonization, electrification, and also via the connection to district heating. So this will narrow down the household's profiles somehow, because the number of technology that could be implemented is narrowed down. So what we wanted to focus on with BPIE is on the insulation of homes. Is my home properly insulated for a heat pump, an electric heat pump to operate correctly? So that's what people need to know, whether they should invest and how much. Next, please. So just to go through the main findings of the BPIE study on the heat pump readiness indicator in the energy performance certificates, because we think that's going to be an instrumental indicator for people to know what to do. Just to set the scene, we looked across Europe for 5 different climate zones. So that's the different cluster you see. And all those columns are the boiled down to 6 profiles of the 30 buildings we had a look to. So you can see here Atlantic. So that's where you have the worst U values, so the least insulated housing. And here, Boreal, so that's Scandinavia, where with the best U values, unsurprisingly. But how does that interact with climate and energy consumption and heating needs? Next. So just to also say that to you, we fixed all other parameters. So we only had a look to insulation. Can be frustrating because you also have to have a look to the kind of radiators and everything, but we really wanted to map out what the insulation parameter looks like. So we fixed the type of heat pump and made a few assumptions. The study is of course online, so you will find it on our website. But just to illustrate here with continental Spain, so you have the different building types, and the 4 columns are to illustrate what happens to energy consumptions once you have a retrofit with different depth. So here is so on the left, for people online, on the left of each group of bars, it's the business as usual case. No retrofit. When you have a shallow retrofit, 30% insulation improvement, a medium retrofit, so 50% improvement of insulation and U values, and deep retrofit, 70% improvement. So you can see the different colors here. Once I've explained that, what I explained is the yellow bars. The more you insulate, the least you consume of energy. You also have gray, which is the remaining consumption for the backup system. and in orange and blue, you have the heat pump itself. So in blue, it's the heat extracted from the ambient air, and in orange, the electricity. So you can see that the more you insulate, the least you consume. But you can see the striking difference between continental Spain, where you see that a shallow insulation is enough to get rid of the backup system. So you don't need, you only need the electric heat pump. In the Alpine region, this becomes to be true when you have at least a medium in the worst case scenario, but it really builds the case here in the Alpine region for a deep retrofit. So what we would tend to conclude is that deep retrofit is in any case interesting for consumers. It's a good value for money investment to invest in the deep retrofit of your insulation. In the continental Spain case, we are not concluding that a shallow retrofit is enough, because it's one aspect, the heat pump readiness indicator. You can also see that the bars are indeed decreasing, even if your heat pump is already covering all your heating needs. Perhaps on not on an individual approach for your building, but on a societal approach, it's better to invest into medium insulation so that the resulting overall energy consumptions are lower. So you have less investment in the reinforcement of the electricity grids, for example, when copper is becoming way more expensive as well at the moment. Next. And just to conclude on this, the other aspect I mentioned was the energy performance certificates. So what BPIE did is to have a look at the different parameters already currently existing in the certificates methodologies. You can see those parameters in dark blue. In light blue, it's the parameters needed to compile the different parameters to get the heat pump readiness indicator. So what you can see is that they are already there. We are not saying you need to have threefold more parameters in your EPCs. You need to, well, start by filling in the different parameters properly, but then it's also a question of reshuffling the combination of the different parameters. But it's not like another investment in the methodologies of those tools that exist since 20 years, but it will be definitely a step forward, more reliability and more usefulness for consumers. And it's also a key tool to gear up the one-stop shops to make it an easier hook for consumers to know what profile of retrofit pathway we should get engaged in. And that's it.
So. So thank you very much, Guillaume. I know that you have to leave, but I have a question for you, and then I set you free. I wanted to ask you, since you presented this heat pump readiness indicator, how could it be best included in legislation?
Well, at the moment, as mentioned earlier, we are going through the Fit for 55 package, so a revision of quite a few directives, but the most relevant one is the one addressing the energy performance certificates, so the energy performance of building directive. We do think that there should be this aspect addressed in there via a Commission delegated act, so that the Commission would be mandated to dig in this question and go for the harmonization of EPCs with that particular angle.
Okay. So thank you very much. And now I set you free to your next commitments. But now it's time for me to present Adrian Yeel. I will just put myself here. Let's see. So Adrian Yeel is the head of media and campaigns at Energy Cities. He has two main roles: highlight the struggles and successes of cities in the energy transition, and also to advocate that the EU for the tools to allow cities to hit their potential and their targets. A side benefit of the role is a constant stream of inspiring stories about how cities are tackling climate change and accelerating the energy transition. And then Adrian joined Energy Cities back in January 2019 to work on what he loves, cities and sustainability. So whenever you're ready, Adrian, I'll let you, this space all for you, and I will pass the slides. So,
thank you. 20 kilos lighter when that photo was taken. It's been a long few years, isn't it? Right. So, first off, delighted to be here. I have a brother-in-law in Kerry who's renovating his house, and I made sure last year when he was asking me for advice that I put him in touch with Superhomes, because it really is. It's a great, great program. We've done great stuff in Ireland. From a city's point of view, with the upcoming EPBD, we're going to see a shift from cities that want to do one-stop shops to cities that kind of have to do one-stop shops and maybe don't have the enthusiasm that some of the current city leaders have. And I think that's going to play out and show what kind of one-stop shops we end up with. So first, I'm just going to go through, in the next slide, a brochure, which I thought was the first slide. But anyway, it's a guide to how to set up a one-stop shop for cities, right? And it was made in conjunction with Horizon 2020. So thank you very much for that. Hey, Thomas. And it lays out the 4 different sort of business models for one-stop shops. There's the ESCO model, which doesn't really apply to private housing. It's more a commercial, industrial thing, so I won't go into that. But if you look at the next slide, that's the guide. I really would encourage you to download it and take a look at it. It's full of information about one-stop shops and what cities need to grapple with as they start to roll them out in more and more countries. So next slide. This is the first, and I would say the most common model of one-stop shop. It's the facilitation, right? And if I can use an analogy, if renovation is like hiking through the mountains and it's a long haul and it's a lot of work and it's a lot of preparation, the facilitation one-stop shop is the office you go to where they give you a map. They say, okay, here's where you get your financing, and here's some companies that work locally, and here's some things you should look at, and they help. There's no question, you don't want to go into the mountains without a map. But it's what you get what you pay for, right? It's a fairly low cost, low commitment move for cities. So I think we're going to unfortunately see a lot of them for that reason. But for cities, it's really about, this is a service they can set up within their existing administration. They don't have to set up another company. Maybe they have to hire an additional staff member, but they're probably putting an office within their existing municipal buildings. They're not looking at additional real estate. Crucially, they don't have to come up with a business plan because they're not setting up a business. They're setting up a service for citizens within their community, within their municipality. So it helps, it's great. I'm not going to go through all the pros and cons because it's very small writing and you don't want to hear me read the text. But while it's helpful, this doesn't get us where we need to go in terms of the long-term deep retrofits. It helps, it's a good thing, but we want to see more. And that's the next business model. So so this is more the coordination one-stop shop. So in terms of the hiking through the mountains metaphor, this is a guide that goes with you through the mountains to help you out as you go, to track the best route. So you get a lot more hand-holding. It's a lot more supportive, little encouragement from time to time as you get bogged down in the details of renovating your own home. It's a much bigger commitment, however, from the city, right? You're starting to look at, do I need a public-private building? Am I providing services that compete with the private sector? And if so, what kind of EU state aid rules apply? You can't, I mean, as great as these are, you can't undercut the private sector either and take people out of jobs. You need to work with those. And you're building the relationships with the other suppliers, the financial institutions, the plumbers, and what have you. But it's a lot more time, it's a lot more upfront. You're building a business plan. So from a city's point of view, they're saying, okay, this is something we're going to launch. It's probably going to lose money for the first 2 to 3 years at least. How are we going to make money? Are we going to be advocating for step-by-step renovations, which means we're going to get a little fee with each step maybe, but we're going to have 1,000 jobs to manage? Do we want to instead do deep retrofit, which means a lot of the people who walk into our office are not going to buy, right? We're going to spend a lot of time talking to those people. We're going to get nothing out of it, but we'll end up with maybe 10 big projects to manage. It's a really tricky thing for a city to set up this kind of business. And it's not always obvious what's best. The context determines a lot. In places where, you know, housing costs have gone up a lot, which admittedly is in a lot of places, it's much easier to get people to invest in their buildings, especially, you know, a young couple that buys a house. Okay, we'll take on a massive loan to renovate this because we're going to live in it for 25 years. Our member in Frederikshaven in Denmark said, you know what, we're losing people. Housing values aren't that high. We need to focus on step-by-step renovations because that's what the market will bear. The people renovating their homes know that the value isn't going to skyrocket. They're not going to build that equity in their building to justify a deep retrofit. And all of these things need to be taken into account for the city when they're developing that business model and what kind of service it is. And then the last business model, next slide, thank you, is the all-inclusive, right? So this is your guide, this is your Sherpa, and he's got a donkey to carry all your stuff with you through the mountains. It's the gold-plated service, and it's brilliant. And this is what we'd like to see a lot more of. But as the other people have pointed out, it's just not always appropriate in the context, right? Depending on the geography, the real estate market, and what have you. One of the issues that all three of these models face is that none of them really reach low-income houses. Right? It's hard to build a business model around helping people who don't have a lot of money, especially when it's a massive investment. So that's one thing that needs to be tackled outside of one-stop shops, or at least we need to be quite upfront that this is gonna get us a lot of the way to where we want to be with our building stock. But we need different approaches for low-income housing and for social housing. The other thing when cities are doing their business plans is you need to look at apartment buildings or condominiums completely separately. I mean, it's a different world of pain to enter when you go to a building with 40 units. And not only are you trying to find the best route to energy efficiency, you've got to get people who are renting and living there and people who own it and just see it as a source of income, get them on the same page. It's a completely different kettle of fish. And so I would strongly recommend when cities are doing their business plans that they leave that aside too. And we have to tackle buildings, but a one-stop shop on the high street is not the way to do it. It's just, you're not going to be able to offer those services to the broad public. That needs a really specialized team to go in and analyze how to make that happen. Of course, it takes money. Ultimately, that'll be the game changer for those low-income houses and the apartment buildings. Would you mind the next slide? Thank you. And the next one. This is just briefly a study that we did on local staff for climate, looking at what cities need to invest in terms of decarbonizing their building stock alone. It's not the overall Fit for 55 goals. We reckon about 214,000 more staff locally. Cities probably need 3% more budget just on salaries, which will cost about 16 billion a year, which, I mean, they're big numbers, but spread over Europe are not actually that big. But we need to start talking about how we're going to do it, because this is just for the building stock, and there is so much else in the Fit for 55 package that's going to come down onto cities' shoulders, and they will be competing for resources. We need to be quite upfront that cities need a lot more investment from the member states and directly from the EU. Next slide. This is how it breaks down across Europe. So for Ireland, we reckon 884 staff locally, 84 million euros a year. That said, this is a thumb in the air assessment. Now, we took a Dutch study that was very detailed. It was done by the Dutch Public Service about what they need for to decarbonize their buildings. And then we extrapolated for that over the rest of the EU member states. So I wouldn't swear by this on the national level, but what we would say very clearly is that member states need to figure out how much they need to invest in their local authorities, and especially in the skills. Because if you live in a small town where their focus has been filling in potholes for the last 20 years, make sure people don't complain about the roads. It's a huge step change to get them to start thinking about this level of service providing, and that varies a lot depending on the member state. If you go ahead a slide, another one. It's not a great map, but this is the level of local expenditure across the EU. Not easy to read, but so the average is 3,400 spent per person by local authorities. Denmark is way out in front at like 18,000 euro. Ireland, I think, is at 14 or 1,800 euros. And some of the federal countries are a bit different because a lot of that spending is done at a regional level as opposed to a local level. But the main point here is that there's a huge disparity in the amount of resources cities have to open one-stop shops and manage them in different member states. And the resources they have will directly translate into how good a one-stop shop they can offer to decarbonize the building stock. Next slide. And because just to wrap it up, in terms of the EU policy landscape, I think everyone knows more or less what's coming down the pipe in terms of the EPBD, the Renewable Energy and Energy Efficiency Directive, with the mandatory heat mapping, which is going to be, I think, really exciting. But I'd also just like to point out that one-stop shops are a brilliant entry point to go beyond buildings. They are literally a doorway people can walk through where they learn more about the energy system in general. And it's a great place where you can bring people together to do things like collective self-consumption, to share solar energy as that gets generated and there are surpluses, to introduce things like car sharing. There's a huge potential there once you've actually invested in a storefront to use it for much, much more than just renovating buildings. Not that it's not a substantial enough challenge in its own right, but once you have that there and you have people sort of getting into energy retrofits and the energy system, it's a shame to try and limit it just to buildings. There's a really rich potential there to get people involved. And I will leave it for there, and happy to answer any questions you may have.
No questions? Okay, but if anyone in the room has a question for Adrian, this is your moment to shine. If not, I will pass to the next session, actually, because Thomas has a question. So please, this is the moment. I'm just gonna approach you the microphones, and then I'll give you one to you. Oh, so like this in the audience. I mean, it's good. So Daniela, let's start with you. Like, all right, and then I will just pass the microphone.
Thank you very much for the interesting summary of the models. You mentioned, or you showed before, numbers related to staff need, but also investment need for building renovation. Were these focusing on public assets only, or did these include residential buildings in the cities?
It's absolutely on residential buildings as well.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And now, Thomas.
Thank you, Thomas Nowak. I'm the Secretary General of EHBA and actually a longtime follower and fan of Superhomes, actually before it was a project even. I have two questions. The first one, you mentioned that there is a lot of employment needed. And I wonder if there is any part of the discussion on asking if the administrative procedures cannot be simplified. Because I'm seeing it quite often that people say, yeah, we need more people, but nobody says, can we actually do what we do with less people? Maybe the challenge is so big that this is not an option, but maybe we can do it with half of what you envision if you just thought we do everything the way we do it today. And then a second point, on one of your slides on the full stop shop, you said that you put negative, it's not for free. Is that really a negative, or is that not something where people would pay for because it gives them really an advantage of peace of mind? Thank you.
So to answer the first question, absolutely. I think my own experience would bear that out. I renovated my home last year here in the Flemish region of Belgium. I had to get a permis d'urbanisme, which had to go through several layers of communal support, had to be approved by the local council that I could do the external installation, and it took months and delayed everything. Whereas I'm fairly sure in Ireland, but correct me if I'm wrong, that if you're just insulating, there's no change of use, there's no change in volume, just go right ahead, right? I mean, that alone, it's a huge cost and a huge time waste that doesn't need to be there. So yes, there's absolutely scope for cutting out responsibilities to speed up home insulation, definitely. The second question, free, not free, it's a fair point. The advice has value, and things that have value should be paid for as well. That ultimately is down to the one-stop shop's business model. Normally, what you try to do and what comes out in that report is you try and get a lot of stuff online, right? You have your digital portal where you put a lot of the information that is free, and that's most. If memory serves, they get about 40% of their inquiries are online and have gone through a process and a questionnaire that is free. So that's there, and then as you get more detailed, okay. So it's I think in the ideal world, yeah, you have a bit of a balance.
So thank you very much for the presentation. Now we will move, I will just put myself here, but I will have to change something in the settings. So if it takes like 1 second to connect, no problem. But now we will move to the presentations of the Superhomes 2030 project, and we will start with the presentation of our project coordinator, Fiona Conway. So if you give me a second, Fiona, I will just connect so we can hear you also in the room. So 1 second. Whenever you're ready, you can start.
Hi, how are you? Sorry, I can't actually be there in person. I just wanted to give a brief overview of the project and just where the concept came from. So the concept was developed by Tipperary Energy Agency. We subsequently had a joint venture with Electric Ireland, which has created our Superhomes Ireland group. So this would have started with, listening to local authorities and with homeowners who were trying to get ahead and do this retrofit and what the pain points that they were coming up against. And it was by analysing those pain points that this concept was developed. And this project is about scaling this, moving from 100 units at 6 million to 536 million. And it's about scale because, as we all know, the challenges that are out there, having this, idea in a small area isn't going to help tackle our carbon emissions. One of the main concepts of this project is the regional one-stop shop, which we've heard from our previous speakers, is something that is really important. You have the general public who are trying to go through all of these different technologies and the research that's out there. It can be confusing. Having this one-stop shop is, as the previous speaker said, it's like a guide. It's a map as to how you're going to do this. And I suppose then following on from that, it's about that building, capacity building and the training for homeowners. And surveyors and contract staff and these skilled staff that are carrying out this work, that we know that the training and the information that they have is the latest and is top notch, and that they're able to carry this work out to the highest standards. Within the one-stop shop model, one of the key things also would be the financial solutions piece, and financial solutions that are independent of public funds. So, there's been a lot of work in this project on creating those financial solutions, because without the ability to finance this project, it's very difficult for you to do your retrofit. You may want to, but it's a difficult solution. One of the other pieces of the project would also be, looking at the energy performance data platforms, and creating a sort of an open source template where people can show the value of retrofits. And again, following up, the other part of this project would be, looking at all the technical analysis, the design systems and solutions, and what is the best way? How do these work in the best way? How do we use the best of each of those to create a solution for retrofit that is the optimum? And with this group and the partners of Electric Ireland, Superhomes, TUS, ESB, Sustainability Works, they have collaborated so well in quite difficult circumstances, I suppose, in the last 3 years, unforeseen circumstances. And their ability to build this brand and to create something that is scalable is a testament to the work of the group that are here. So what I would like to do is, because they have a lot more in-depth knowledge than I do, is to hand over to the partners, and they will give you more insight on each of their areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Fiona. Now, as you mentioned, it's time to introduce and give the word to the partners. And as I promised, now we're introducing the results, Superhomes 2030. So we will start with our first speaker of Superhomes 2030, which is Evelyn O'Keefe. Evelyn has a Bachelor in Marketing and a Master of Business in Marketing from Waterford Institute of Technology. Evelyn has over 5 years of experience with both service and product business to consumer marketing, and she joined Electric Ireland Superhomes back in 2021 as a marketing specialist, managing the launch of the brand and website, and continues every day to deliver all the marketing activities for Electric Ireland Superhomes. So whenever you're ready, Evelyn, off you go.
Thank you, Irene, and good morning, everybody. So today I'm going to be speaking about market analysis and our brand development of Electric Ireland Superhomes. So if you could just move to the next screen there, Irene, please. Yeah, so the next screen then. So in terms of market analysis, so in February 2022, Ireland's government announced its National Climate Action Plan. So this set out a new home energy upgrade scheme. So in terms of the retrofits that need to be carried out by the Climate Action Plan, so the target is 500,000 homes to be retrofitted to a minimum B2 BR rating by 2030. So that's the national target. So in terms of our housing stock in Ireland, it's quite poor energy efficient wise. New building regulations were brought into effect in 2005. So any homes built after 2005 have quite a high standard of building. So in general, the existing housing stock before 2005 has quite a poor energy efficiency. The new SEI, the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland scheme, brought together the Home Energy Upgrade Scheme, which highlights 2 pathways for homeowners. So we have one pathway, which is our one-stop shop route, which is carrying out a number of measures at the one time in a home to bring that up to a minimum B2 BR rating, and Electric Ireland Superhomes operate within that one-stop shop route. The other pathway for a homeowner then is individual measures. So a homeowner can carry out a number of measures over time. So for example, a homeowner could carry out insulation this year and maybe solar PV next year. So they would actually manage that process themselves and apply for grant funding themselves. So with the one-stop shop, we take that process away from the homeowner and manage it from start to finish. There is benefits to homeowners using the one-stop shop. For example, they actually have access to more grant funding. So for example, windows and doors, there's a grant available through the one-stop shop, but not through the individual measures. There's also a launch bonus when a homeowner uses the one-stop shop process as well. So there's certainly benefits to a homeowner carrying out measures at the one time to reach that minimum B2 BR rating. So in terms of Electric Ireland Superhomes, so that climate action plan was announced in February 22, as I mentioned, and in May 2022, Electric Ireland Superhomes were registered as an SEI one-stop shop. As of this month, May 2023, there is now 13 one-stop shops operating in Ireland. So as you can see, there's been a huge amount of media coverage in the last year, which has definitely helped customer awareness, customer education, and that announcement has led to a large organic demand for our services, which is absolutely brilliant to see as well, such large interest. So next slide, please, Irene. Thank you. So just, I suppose, an overview of the one-stop shop landscape in Ireland at the minute. As I said, there's 13 registered one-stop shops operating in Ireland. This is planned to go to 20 one-stop shops by the end of this year and will naturally grow over the coming years as well. As you can see from categories A, B and C, the majority of one-stop shops operating in Ireland at the minute are very much contractor-led, direct labour-led and or subcontracting-led. Whereas Electric Ireland Superhomes and one other one-stop shop is operating as a consultancy led. So we at Electric Ireland Superhomes, for example, don't have an in-house contracting. However, we work with Electric Ireland Superhome approved contractors to carry out the retrofit works. Other uniquenesses then to ourselves is that we're actually heat pump led. So other one-stop shops may allow homeowners to keep their oil and gas, whereas with Electric Ireland Superhomes, a heat pump, a renewable energy source heat pump, is a key measure to any of our retrofits and any of our products. Other uniqueness then is that we have an in-house engineering team with retrofit energy engineers. So we're definitely unique in the whole landscape of the market. So next slide then, Irene, please. So in terms of EU trends then, so in terms of Ireland's housing, we have over 2 million homes in Ireland. So therefore we have over 5 million of a population or an audience to target to. So as I said earlier, we have 500,000 homes as a country to retrofit to a minimum B2 BR rating by 2030. Electric Ireland Superhomes has a target of 35,000 homes by 2030. So we're coming out at about 7% of Ireland's target. So therefore we have a huge role to play within the Ireland's target. We're also seeing many EU countries moving away from oil and gas as well and towards renewable energy. So it's great to see that movement and transition throughout Europe, and we're obviously seeing that as well in Ireland. We also, as part of this Superhomes 2030 project, we carried out a community of practice webinar with TUS as part of the project, and we looked at examples of other one-stop shops around Europe, just to, I suppose, highlight how similar we all are, but highlight obviously how different we kind of operate as well and learn from each other. So we had 3 examples around Europe. So we had ourselves as the Irish example, we had People Powered Retrofit, who are based in Manchester in the UK, and we had Open Gala in the Basque region. So it was brilliant to see that there is a lot of similarities. There's a lot of learnings and differences between us as well, but overall the one-stop shop model is clearly effective throughout throughout Europe, as well as operating in Ireland. We have a very supportive government policy. The involvement of the Green Party has given a very detailed climate action and ambitious climate action plan, and it's very supportive of the home retrofit scheme. And we can see this through increased SEI grant funding for home energy upgrades, which is brilliant to see and is incentivizing homeowners to take action and to improve their home's energy efficiency. The SEI then is the Sustainable Energy Authority of Ireland. They provide grant funding and we manage that for the homeowner as part of our one-stop shop operation. The SCI have created a number of marketing campaigns, really strong marketing campaigns, which again has helped to build awareness and education. So between SCI, ourselves, other one-stop shops and individual measure companies, we're all doing our part to play into customer awareness and to build education. And we can certainly see in the last 12 months, even from us going to events, that there's a lot more people know a huge amount more about home energy upgrades and the different, I suppose, plans or proposed routes maybe that they can go down to improve the BR rating of their home. So the next slide there, please, Irene. Thank you. So in terms of our product offering, so when we launched Electric Ireland Superhomes, the new branding and the new website, we actually had one product, and that was our whole house approved contractor product. Fast forward to today, we have 4 product offerings, and each of these we have huge potential in terms of future market opportunities. So just to go through them, and as I said earlier, all of our products are very much heat pump led. So the first then is our whole house with our approved contractors. So these are homes built pre-2005 and they would require quite a deep retrofit, which would cover a range of measures installed at the one time. Our Heat Pump Plus then section. So as I mentioned earlier, new building regulations were introduced into Ireland in 2005. So these homes would be built to a higher standard. So therefore they wouldn't require such a deep retrofit. They may require a solar PV and maybe insulation and a heat pump to get up to that minimum B2 BR rating. So they're heat pump ready or almost heat pump ready. The next then is consultancy projects. So many homeowners would take the opportunity to include home energy upgrade when renovating their house. It's an ideal time to do energy works while carrying out an extension or in a renovation. So in this instance, we'd actually work as a retrofit energy consultant nearly to their architect team or contractor team. So we would advise on retrofit design and manage SAI grant funding as well. And then there's multiples. So multiples is obviously carrying out home energy retrofits in the multiples. So our target markets here would be the likes of local housing authorities, social housing and private landlords. So the next slide there, please. So next I'm going to cover Superhomes communities and the brand developments then since the launch. So in terms of communities, we have a number of parties involved. We have homeowners, we have our contractors, we have architects, we have multiples, and we have many stakeholders as well. Next slide, Irene. Sorry, thanks. So in terms of brand development, so the brand is certainly evolving and will continue to evolve over time. The brand, as I said, launched in October 2021, along with the new website. So as I said, we're carrying out a lot of marketing activity at the minute, and naturally over the coming years it will develop. But it's a very, very strong brand, and we're very proud of that. So I just wanted to showcase just a quick sample of a marketing national campaign that we carried out late last year. So this was for our Heat Pump Plus product. So this went to launch in September to November last year, and it included out-of-home advertising, social media, pay-per-click, which is your Google AdWords, and your leaflet door drop. As you can see, we take a multi-channel approach, and we do so in all our marketing campaigns as it is the most effective. Next slide, Irene. So in terms of awards, I suppose the purpose of awards is obviously acknowledgement of our achievements to date, but also looking about where and signalling where we're going. And we're very proud of the awards that we have won so far. So we have won the Sustainable Business Awards with PwC and the Business Post. So we were the winner of the ESG Innovation Product in Energy last year. We actually have 3 nominations, or we're in 3 categories this year in the shortlist. So fingers crossed in a couple of weeks' time, we'll have good news as well. In terms of the Bonkers.ie award, so this was actually a huge award that we won earlier this year. So Bonkers.ie is a comparison website, and the award is a Consumer Choice Award. So it was a very big award to win. And we're also finalists in the SCI Awards last year as well. So I suppose it's a huge accolade for our team of all the work carried out over the years. So we're very proud of the awards we've achieved so far. In terms of our brand ambassador, so we have a brand ambassador. His name is Hugh Wallace. He's an award-winning architect and TV presenter in Ireland. So many of his shows highlight taking existing houses and renovating them and bringing them into the modern day. So he has a huge knowledge of home energy upgrades. He has an architectural firm himself. So he's seeing day in, day out homeowners coming to them while they're doing their renovations, looking for home energy upgrades as well. So he's a huge knowledge of that. He presented for us at the SCI Energy Show and the Ideal Home Show earlier this year, along with our head retrofit advisor, David Flannery. So Hugh Wallace is a very good fit for the company, and we're looking forward to working with him in the future. So the next slide there, Irene. So just an example of marketing activity overall. Just from this slide, I suppose you can see that there's both local and national. Both local and national are equally as important to us. We had Minister Eamon Ryan do a site visit to one of our retrofitted homes in Galway last year. We sponsored a category at the LAMA Awards. So this is the All Ireland Community and Council Awards. So this would be targeting our multiples product or our multiples audience. And this would be the same for the Irish Council for Social Housing. We also do a huge amount in terms of PR and events. So the Ideal Home Show, as I said, I mentioned, it is probably the biggest homeowner show in Ireland. And we actually sponsor the home energy upgrade section of that event this year. So it's a huge event, and yeah, you can see we definitely hone in on events, and the local and the national focus as well is really important to us. So then we're just moving on then to the finance partnerships. So in October 2022, the AIB partnership was launched. And in January of this year, Metamo Credit Union, so we have two branches. We have First Choice in Mayo, and we have Thurles Credit Union just down the road from our office. So those two branches of Metamo launched with us in January of this year, as I said. We have the partnerships featured on our website and our home energy reports, so that homeowners can click through to the links available. And these finance partnerships actually created bespoke web links for us. So it gives a huge amount of information on that. And we're really looking forward to furthering our marketing collaborations with our finance partners in the future. So that's it. Thank you very much for your time, and we're very much looking forward to building the brand further. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Evelyn. So now it's time that we move to our next speaker. And I hope that now the microphone here is on and you can hear me correctly online. But our next speaker, and I promise after this we will have a 10-minute break, because I can understand that everyone wants to have a coffee, wants to relax a bit. But our next speaker is Stephen Murphy. He's a lecturer and researcher at the Technological University of the Shannon, and he mainly lectures in community energy, renewable energy, and his research topics range from heat pumps, retrofit and renewable energy to waste heat management and circular economy. And well, whenever you're ready, this is your time to shine.
Thanks very much, Irene. Never a great time to be on just before the break, but hopefully we'll we'll keep you awake. So as Irene said, I'm part of TUS, or Technical University of the Shannon. We're a joining up of two Institute of Technologies, Athlone IT and Limerick IT as well. So we have about 14,000 students over 6 campuses, and we offer anything from vocational to professional to PhD courses. So there's a lot as well, and I'll go into it further as well. We have a couple of professional courses that are pretty significant when it comes to contractor development and also for retrofit as well. We're part of the development unit in TUS. We're located in Thurles, and as Irene said, our main focus is on energy, climate action, sustainable development, rural development, and also social enterprise as well. So with that, I'll kick on. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So just a quick, there's a little bit of a glitch there, but that's okay. So this is just a quick overview of what we've done with the Superhomes 2030 project. So there's a clear kind of step-by-step outline here. The whole idea of our role in the Superhomes 2030 project was standards review and also contractor development. So we started off with standards review, then went looking at an innovative technology report, training and plan of resources, and training deployment, feedback and evaluation. So next slide, please. So standards review. So like any company, there is standards that are held up. So for example, TEA developed in-house standards for back in the starting days of Superhomes, and they were mainly developed in line with relevant national references or guides as well. SR54 is mentioned there. It's a retrofit code of practice. SR50 as well is another new one for heat pumps. And the task output of this was to basically look through each of the documents, which there was over 100 of, and figure out, well, what needs to happen to ensure that the transfer of knowledge for, let's say, junior engineers coming in or contractors that are coming online, to see, well, what can be done better. And as you can imagine, for 100 reference documents, it was pretty inefficient for transfer knowledge to junior engineers, and it was kind of difficult to incorporate into training programs because, you know, reference documents and standards are quite technical, and it's kind of, unless you have a specific course to run through every single standards and reference document for each contractor, that's, you know, it'd be very inefficient, you could say. So next slide, please. So then after the first step of looking through the standards, we also looked through, well, the Superhomes package was focused on proven solutions, so fabric upgrades, demand control, and air source heat pumps as well. But we were looking forward as well. We need to look into the future and see, well, what are the technologies that are becoming mainstream, like electric vehicles, battery storage, smart grid standards, and low greenhouse or global warming potential refrigerants is another thing there. And another one I would add is grid integration. I would say there's a lot in that too. Demand control, you could say. So what we did was, instead of going to every single technology that was coming down the line, we decided to create a process to help with technologies coming online. So we developed and tested a technology evaluation process and developed and tested a technology integration process. So again, the process that are involved for bringing in these new technologies. And I won't go through all of it now because it's a lot of slides to get through, but you'll have the slides afterwards, so if you want to look through those processes. So next slide, please. So next thing, we moved on to the training needs analysis. So we kind of get a status quo of what was happening in the standards and, let's say, how to bring in new standards. So now we're looking through training needs of in-house engineers and also contractors. So next slide, please. So there was two subtasks that I have to look at. Is the refinement of the standards. Again, looking through, we already did the status quo of it, and also to do the profiles of the knowledge profiles of contractors and in-house for Superhomes. And again, because Superhomes is a one-stop shop based around grant funding, we kind of use the grant funding minimum requirements as kind of a starting point, you could say. So moving on, please. So again, refinement of the electric iron Superhome standards. We identified and defined appropriate format for the new refined. So again, we put it into a nice clear format that can be used, and if any new regulation comes down the line or any new standards, they can be fully incorporated into the standards of Superhome as well. And also it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to look at. There's a primary reference document for each of them, and it clearly outlines where what the main clauses are for each of the contractor types. So for example, an installation contractor, only parts about installation will be on for him in, let's say, SR54. That's pretty much, and then moving on to next. So yeah, again, just task input, task output. We refined the standards report and tested a simple format that allowed for quick and easy knowledge transfer between in-house engineers and contractors. So moving on, please. Next thing, we looked at knowledge profiles of Superhome contractors and in-house engineers and management staff as well. So this is again trying to pull together the status quo of what's happening and map out the skills that are required for, as Thomas spoke about today, is like making more efficient workers rather than having more workers. So we created a profile for in-house engineers and contractors, and we got feedback on the skill profiles for each as well. So moving on. Yeah, so again, just again task outputs of it. We created a report on all the different skills profiles we have, and we mainly came up with for in-house and contractors using the main headings, which was retrofit management skills, building fabric and airtightness, and building services. These are the three main headings that we looked at, and we kind of broke down each skill and knowledge. Yeah, each part of the skills in each of them. Also, we had a feedback form, so we asked senior engineers and senior contractors as well to identify any risks or any associated risks or possible solutions that were surrounding these skills gaps. So next slide, please. So then we came up with a training plan and resources. So this is a step-by-step look at, well, these are the gaps that are available or that are out there within in-house engineers, junior engineers especially. How do we help, overcome those gaps? So a training plan and also resources had to be created for this. Next slide, please. So the output of this task was the report as itself, but we, it required training for both external contractors and in-house staff as well. And again, as I spoke about earlier, the minimum requirements will follow the grant funding as well. So a lot of ways we were thinking about when it came to training, and this included mentoring, which is again something that cannot be understated. Procedure manuals as well, as we talked about the standards review as well. We had a quick and easy guide, but again, that's still not enough. We use short webinar sessions as well, because again, not everything has to be a full-time course. It can be told in 10 minutes or so on and so forth. So we brought in that for kind of easy to understand and digestible pieces of information. And then masterclass talks as well is another big one where, for example, in-house engineer or a contractor that's seen to be excellent or has provided some feedback on something, they're put in front of the rest of the contractors or in-house engineers and told and tell them what they learned. So next slide, please. So the minimum requirements for contractors for SCI grant funding. So these are the kind of main headings that are on the minimum requirements, and they give requirements for standards and review, and also for regulation that has to be followed, but also minimum requirements for contractors that are, let's say, installing. So heat pumps there, heating controls, insulation, windows, doors, everything that you can think of when it comes to a retrofit. And this is all specified in the domestic technical standards and specifications. So it's a bit outdated at the moment, but hopefully there might be room to improve on our update the document. So next slide, please. So the minimum requirements that were, from that, so in order to work with Superhomes, you have to meet these requirements in some shape or form, fashion, I would say. So there was always a thought of, well, what happens after minimum requirements of contractors? Things like NZEB fundamentals, simple, kind of quick to easy understand, NZEB ventilation system, external wall, application, building physics. These are kind of the main topics that we looked at when we were thinking of the training plan, that after the minimum requirements are fulfilled, well, what next for the contractor? How can they improve their own skills, and maybe even, like as we suggested in the plan, is that a contractor could become an engineer for Superhomes as well. So next slide, please. For sorry, that's just the in-house engineers then. So for in-house engineers, we kind of put this nice little graphic together on what is required from an in-house engineer. So you can see all the steps there, and how to make an in-house engineer efficient. We had to look at the workflow, obviously, firstly, and obviously what skills are required for each of them. So if you move on to the next slide, please. For the deployment of training, so I can move on. So after we had the plan in place and resources put together, so contractors, talking with contractors, so a lot of the training that was with contractors was kind of in-person on-site training. So when you land on site first with the contractor. Maybe it could be the first time working with Superhomes, or maybe it's the 400th time they're working with Superhomes. On-site training is pretty substantial when it comes to Superhomes, because the Superhomes engineers, they know their stuff, so they're only passing on knowledge to the contractor now. If it sinks in is another thing, but just to kind of, again, pushing the idea of time and missed opportunity for these contractors is kind of a big thing that we've come across, is that when it comes to training, they really think that, well, I'd rather be out working and making money than sitting down learning about making more money, that kind of way. So what we decided to do was short online training for them, just to kind of get the basics covered at least. And from this we had 7 hours of training that was presented by various experts in different fields, from heat pumps. To say on that is probably the most viewed and most requested was heat pumps, because again, insulation, the guys in Ireland, they've been around for a while, they know their stuff, maybe not everything, but they have a fair idea what they're doing. But when it comes to plumbers in Ireland, it sometimes can fall a bit short when it comes to heat pumps. They're so used to oil boilers and gas boilers that, it's difficult to change. So a lot of requests were coming in for heat pumps, for sizing of heat pumps, for again, the list goes on and on. So these trainings were quick, short, half-an-hour training sessions that have a Q&A session as well. So if any questions were answered at it too. Trainings were recorded and uploaded and is publicly available as well. So we're getting views every day on them. And as I said, the heat pump kind of specific ones are getting probably the most views as well, and that again is showing a need for more and more training on heat pumps, and again, quick and easy training rather than long courses. So next slide, please. That's just the what the webinar series looked like, and there's a couple of people that were involved. Superhomes were involved. They had 2 lovely ones on retrofit and on financing as well. So next slide, please. For in-house engineers, it was a little bit different because it's a lot more technical, a lot more design aspects. So from, let's say, our skills analysis and our skills gap and mapping, you could say, we came up with, well, I would say we attributed to a diploma that was as part of the DASB project. So the DASB is the Digital Academy for the Sustainable Built Environment. It's also a TUS, and it's not TUS-led, but it's a consortium of different education providers in Ireland, and they provide plenty of higher diplomas in like level 8, level 9, and the diploma in that we kind of focused our in-house engineers for Superhomes on was the diploma in residential energy retrofit management. So it hits the nail right in the head. There's residential energy retrofit for fabric, for energy systems, and retrofit management itself. So an in-house engineer, a junior in-house engineer coming through the ranks of Superhomes, looking at these 3 special purpose awards that are given over the course of 18 months, this is your training, I would say. This is how you get up the ranks in seniority. Another thing to speak about on the DASB project is there's a lot of courses that are being brought out, and they're 6 weeks to 12 weeks courses. They're pretty good. I have a couple of them written down here. There's a green procurement, which is a really big thing coming on the line. Traditional buildings renovation as well as a big one, and construction data as well as another big one that they're looking at. So a lot of good work is getting into it, and again, it's all based around the built environment. And there was a gap, you could say, in education provision of retrofit centric courses, you could say. So moving on, feedback and evaluation. So excellent feedback on the short training session and on the courses as well. There's you can just see a couple of them there. The one I would point out that I was kind of laughing about was more please. So there is an opportunity for these kind of short training sessions and what you could call micro credentials. So we're definitely going to look into that in the future as well. Next slide, please. So just some recommendations on contractor training. So from our own analysis and from the whole project itself and other projects too, incentivizing training for contractors is a huge thing. So as they said, the contractors like, why would I do training when I can make money? Well, say if you do this training, you can get more money, or we'll pay for your training, or we'll pay for your day, so on and so forth. So incentivize it. Training requirements and progression requirements. So looking at Engineers Ireland as an example, you could say there's a requirement for a certain amount of continuous professional development hours every year. So this could be taught, this could be brought in as a requirement for Superhomes contractors. Like if you want to work with us, you have to be able to show that you are, developing your profession. So next session, master classes again, another thing, and toolbox talks, quick, easy, fast. Showcase what other your excellent contractors are doing, and continuous training sessions as well is another one as well. So next slide. When it comes to in-house engineers, subsidizing training is a big thing. Funding schemes, you could call it. So again, as I spoke about the residential energy retrofit course, subsidizing that for junior engineers and say, if you do this, you will progress in this in the company. And again, progression requirements, so CPD hours throughout the year. And third level education connections is a big thing too. So again, the more we, as TUSAR, third level education provider, the more contact we have with industry, the more kind of experience we get with talking with people on the ground. They can show the skills gaps, and they might provide the basis for a new course. And that new course then could go on as part of could be created as a new course, and internships between industry and third level education providers as well would be a good thing, kind of work placement schemes. So next question, I think that's everything. That was a quick round tour, so I hope I didn't lose too many people. But if you have any questions, or if you need anything, my email address is there, stephen.murphy@2study, and thank you very much.
So we are back with more Superhomes presentations. So it's time for me to introduce Gillian. She's an experienced executive and non-executive director with wide-ranging general and specialist management experience across the private, public, and international finance sector. Since 2019, she has been an independent business and financial consultant, working in advisory capacity in the public and private sector, both domestically and within the EU, particularly in areas of risk management and sustainability. Previously, Gillian held senior roles in the National Treasury Management Agency, initially with the Sovereign Investment Fund, and from 2014 in the Strategic Banking Corporation of Ireland, the then newly established state funder and provider of risk-sharing products for all SME sectors. Okay, Gillian, whenever you're ready, the floor is yours. I give you the microphone, and I will pass the slides. So here you are.
Thank you very much. Morning, and thank you. My name is Gillian Mahon, as Irene said, and I am an associate and an advisor to Sustainability Works. Sustainability Works is a boutique sustainability consultancy, relatively young, and we deal with looking at sustainability and green across all sectors, and from anything from I suppose strategy development, implementation, all the way through to setting up ecosystems for such things as green technology. Our role in this Superhomes project started back in around 2019, when we were one of the initial partners, and there was a discussion about how we would bring a solution fix into a one-stop shop, which as we've seen from earlier conversations here, in terms of Daniela recognizing the European position in terms of it's key to bringing in all elements to the consumer in terms of making their decision processes. It's already, I think, Williams kind of talked to the piece around the consumer having too much information. We'd agree with that, and making decisions is difficult. So the one-stop shop looks to solve that. I suppose in this piece, I'm just going to look at our role and our approach to how we went through. So obviously we looked, what was the existing research in terms of financial solutions potentially that we could align with a one-stop shop model? What would be the most appropriate design for the type of entity we're trying to service here. Looking at what the current offerings were in the marketplace and just deciding among the financial providers what would be the best fit. Then with Superhomes agreeing what the commercial ask would be, and also then what the commercial ask would be from the finance provider themselves. Then we moved to looking at the launch in terms of the solution, and where we are now is we're at instant and launch and looking, I suppose, at a longer term evaluation as to what we should tweak, what will the lessons learned be out of the project, and ultimately what the finance solution should look like as we go forward. Next slide, please. Everyone in the room knows that finance is a barrier, but not the only barrier, but it is one of the upfront issues for consumers when they consider retrofitting their properties or looking at energy efficiency. Adrian's already spoken to the split incentives. That's a very difficult one when you come to landlords and lessees, and in terms of who bears the cost of this. Disruption is an issue. The information flow, as I said, too much of it, and then actually trying to establish who is the trusted advisor and whether they have a vested interest. So next, please. I suppose what came out of it was that an SEAI, who's been referred to on a number of occasions before, which is the Sustainable Energy Authority in Ireland, had done a lot of research on the consumer behaviour around spending money on retrofitting your house and your homes. And out of that, we were then asked as Sustainability Works to look at how do you inform and bring the finance provider with us. And I suppose we did a body of work which was looked at creating that, which I'll provide a link to later, but it ultimately looked at informing the finance providers in an Irish context, because a lot of them didn't know technically what was involved, what they would be funding, and how it might impact in terms of their actual own green lending, and whether it would actually could stand up to the regulatory conditions required. But ultimately, what came out of all those discussions, both on the behaviour side and from the finance providing side, is really an innovative green solution was what ultimately was required. So it could be in the form of public supported lower cost funding, it could be on bill schemes, it could be on tax run or through the pay system or green mortgages. All are wonderful, not all work in the same context, and certainly not all fit the Irish system. Next page, please. So this is what we recognise worked well elsewhere, and I think in a number of the earlier presentations, people have talked about the integrated retrofit type of service and finance offer as essential to probably underpinning any solution. Needed to be underpinned by grants, so therefore public money needed to be employed. Nobody was going to pay all out for just retrofitting their house. And then there's the whole affordability piece. A lot of schemes seem to work with on tax or on bill, generally not in Europe, but does work in the US and Canada, but probably different regulations, different housing models, and different financing models. The two options obviously were either mortgage or personal loan structures. And ultimately, there is a view that the lower cost, longer term funding needs to be made available, what we would call where there's a market failure. So where the private sector doesn't see the value in putting something here, it would need that public money would need to be aligned with it so that they could bring solutions. Next, please. So, what should work? Well, the integrated model should work. And ultimately, I think from our perspective, when we looked at this as a consultancy body, we said, what are we trying to solve for? We're trying to solve for a pain point here. We're trying to solve for an information point, and we're trying to bring a point where the customer knows there are all these issues, but can see it in one place. And it goes to maybe Adrian's presentation on what does the ultimate one-stop shop do? And there might be a big wish list there, but there is a route. And ultimately, we're thinking, let's start on the basis we're trying to fix that pain point. In the Irish context, there are grants. The grants are under review. We may challenge whether they're extensive enough, whether they deliver enough to incentivize behaviour, but they do exist, up to 50% in some cases. The on-bill, on-tax works in some countries is a longer-term prospect for Ireland, but will need kind of legislative and regulatory change. Probably not something to be holding your breath about. So we would say don't rule it out, but it's definitely a long-term fix as opposed to short-term. The mortgage and the personal loan pieces, these are available and they're available green, but I think there is a thing around, from an Irish context anyway, the complexity of changing lenders when it comes to mortgage or topping up loans, and the security and the added issues around security of over the property, etc. When you top up for some of these, makes it less feasible maybe in some ways. So we would be considering, I suppose, the reality of I suppose this analysis would be that personal loans would probably be the easiest ones to deliver in the short term, and the final part is the longer term, lower term available in the market. So these are the kind of rates that should work, etc. And they don't necessarily need government support. But as we went into discussions with the financial providers, there was definitely a vacuum between what the private sector was willing to deliver and what the public sector could possibly support. So maybe we look to the next slide, please. So this was sort of the wish list of how it would work. So these were all the delivery partners on the left-hand side for those looking at the screen. In the Irish context, the energy efficiency obligation scheme means that energy providers have an obligation to support any energy efficiency measures that come in, and they get energy credits for that, for anything they put to work. And then down here is the public work. So the grants, EU technical assistance that you would see through programs like ELENA, and then the EU stroke national risk sharing initiative. So, you know, similarly, they would have come through PF4EE and through Horizon 2020. On this side of the screen, you're looking at the one-stop shop model that brings all those together, and then also, in addition, a commercial lender, and ultimately to the homeowner. So this is what we expected would work or could work. Putting it all together is not always that easy. Next screen, next slide, please. Thank you. So this was the ask. We wanted low interest rates. Yeah, okay. We wanted long term, so anecdotally a minimum of 10 years. One-stop shop mechanism that we've spoken to already. Ease of application. So again, while the finance is important, what came across in other work I've done as well, that when you think price is important, often process is the real importance. So that's where you lose people. They get tied up in the bureaucracy of the application or fall down in terms of what they have to provide. And that is where a lot of the assistance actually has value as opposed to actually pricing. And the last part was the ease and flexibility of repayment. You can see on the bottom, we put mortgage and top-up options. Nice to have, but weren't sure that that was ever going to happen. Anyway, sorry, next slide, please. So the positioning when we went into discussion with the finance providers was making a case for them to be involved with Superhomes. So it's obviously was built around this whole thing that they had, you know, ability to build on their delivery in terms of reputational, commercial, and regulatory. I think for all of us, we're well aware that none of the financial parties that we were going to initially discuss with were going to do it for nothing. There had to be something in it, so there's a commercial bottom line for them. But they also recognised, as we had the discussion, reputational value, and also the fact that they, on the basis that they would now have green asset ratios coming in terms of measurement, their books would have to be able to stand up to scrutiny, and therefore to be aligned with a provider such as Superhomes, who had a very positive reputational position in terms of delivering, that this would be of value for them. So these were sort of the discussions we went. Obviously, the early days when the discussions were happening was early 2020, and at that stage we were kind of talking first mover advantage, etc. So, but ultimately this was the pitch point. So next slide, please. between 2020 and 2021, end 2021, when we started to get into real discussions about who we'd partner with, obviously the JV was in discussion with Electric Homes Electric Ireland and Superhomes. Sorry, Freudian slip. But on that basis, a lot of negotiation with the potential parties had to be pulled back in terms of sensitivity to what the discussions might be in that kind of situation, but also that we hadn't full sight of what the model might look like, and ultimately negotiations couldn't really proceed on that basis. But as we looked at it then, it became apparent as we re-engaged that personal loans were not mortgages, terms and just in technical ability to deliver. The interest rate at low, and at that point in time, sub 4-5% would be dependent to review. The question was one finance provider or a group, what was the best option for Superhomes in terms of delivering to a range of customers? Not all may be banked, so what would be best option? And also at the time, there was no banks involved supporting the energy suppliers through one-stop shops. There was some of the credit unions were, and on POST, which is the national postal delivery, but also a much broader brief in terms of sustainability play. They were supporting some of these one-stop shops, but ultimately that was the picture. And so the discussion was going on around, as you can see, these entities here. Next page, please. So when we narrowed it down, I suppose, by the time we got to the middle of 2021 or end of 2021, partners we had, or bankers we had discussed potential moving forward with, and even probably the person who was at forerunner in terms of what we thought would be good in terms of their ability to deliver on green, decided they were leaving the Irish market. So this is where my timing is everything. So on that basis, you then have to decide on whether it's one finance provider or multiples. Are you servicing all the right client base? So do you want those who are just banked, or do you want those that have a wider credit union base? So the nature of what the partnership would be. So is it going to be kind of light touch to something far deeper? And then we had to prioritize who we'd partner with, and then we were re-engaging. So in terms of finalizing what it might look like. Next, please. So this was the selection criteria, and in my slides and when they're circulated, you'll find more detail in the annex of it. But ultimately, what was the interest term that could be they would offer? What were the products they'd offer? What would ultimately the process look like? Would they be involved in sharing some of the promotion and marketing piece? And their authenticity in terms of being green. Obviously, reputational risk is something we didn't want to put Superhomes with. So someone that we knew had a strong green agenda was ultimately the partner we wanted to align with. So next, please. So this is what we were talking about in terms of light touch to fully integrated. So the light touch is basically signposting, and then creating links. Maybe the next stage would be creating links and brochures, etc., that would point to each other in terms of delivery. As we move along the conduit, you ultimately would get to a point where maybe that has been kind of alluded to in earlier discussions, where you'd end up almost being a lender within the Electric Ireland Superhomes model. That has a lot of issues related to it, and unless you want to actually have a finance risk, maybe too early in the day, certainly in pilot, to see if that's the right fit. So this would be the line of which we would have travelled in terms of our recommendations, or a variation, as it says there, a variation of the above in terms of what we might be best fit. Next, please. So ultimately, what we ended up with was an engagement with AIB. AIB, just for context, is one of the two big main banks in Ireland, but we would have recognised they were further along their journey in terms of sustainability, green, that whole agenda, and have kind of pushed themselves out there as in leading in Ireland in the finance world on this, probably best fit in terms of how we want to be recognised as a brand within Superhomes. Metamo were also, credit unions are a very disparate group in Ireland, but there are groups coming together who kind of specialise in certain areas. Metamo is part of the Flexco group, which also has, I suppose, a very niche market, but also recognises some of these key skills in terms of where they want to lend and where they want to be seen to lend around the green piece. So that's launched, as says there, since November 22 into January 23. We're a bit behind in terms of the pilot of recognising how it works. It is currently closer to a signposting, the very light touch piece. We would have recommended to start from there as opposed to pinning our colours to a mast with any one lender, just to see how the market would evolve, because obviously your Superhomes is scaling. A number of them don't want to put, lenders will not put, this commercial obviously decision, they don't want to put a lot of money into something that hasn't scaled. They will look to see whether the partnership works. And I would imagine as the build out in terms of delivery from Superhomes perspective will enable a kind of a building relationship here. But the door is not exclusive. Sorry, there's no exclusivity here. If that changes over the course of the pilot, other players come on board, and we are seeing obviously changes in terms of disruption in the Irish market when we have very limited number of banks now, a lot of other alternative lenders. I think we will see other players who may have an appetite. And I think that will also be helped by what's happening here. And this has been mooted for considerable time. I think we first discussed this when I was in the SBCI in 2016, which is yesterday. But the SBCI is, as was said earlier, was set up to really fund SMEs, providing risk sharing, etc. So its viris isn't really to look at the consumer, but it has. This is the entity having done some review that will be supplying to the consumer in terms of low cost funding, which will be from an amalgamation of national funding and EU funding, and effectively creating a risk share which will bring down the cost of funds and will give some longevity to the loans involved. So ultimately, because this lender is a wholesale lender to entities like those above the line, we will probably see other players come into the market. So it will give more opportunity in terms of what's available in terms. But there will be, to give some comfort to the to Superhomes, the criteria for getting this will mean an awful lot of boxes will already be ticked in terms of how green it is, how reputationally safe it is to be engaged with them. So that will ultimately be, I think, where we will see some move as the pilot starts to tailor out towards the end of the year. Next slide, I think might be, that's the end. So ultimately, I suppose where we came from was recognizing that we could have a quick fix, but maybe for someone like Superhomes who have an intention to grow at pace, but with a very strong green banner and brand, that they want to be aligned with someone who has the same sort of ethos and understanding while delivering commercially in terms of what was needed in terms of the finance model. So I'll leave it for there and happy to take questions.
Thank you very much, Gillian. So now we will move to the next presentation. Just give me a second. So I come here to introduce officially. So our next speaker is David Flannery. He has a vast experience in domestic energy, built up over more than 15 years working in the sector. And he was also centrally involved in the development of Ireland's only eco-village. David has been working with Electric Ireland Superhomes since 2017 as the head of retrofit, advisory and sales. So whenever you're ready, David, the microphone is yours.
Thanks, Lorena. So it's a pleasure to be part of the project and to talk here today. Involved in it from the start in Superhomes, Electric Ireland Superhomes since 2017. So we seem to have developed a lot of the topic and themes that we're going to talk about today. So this work package is optimizing Superhomes business practices, and that's presented today in the context of enhancing the customer experience. Obviously, in improving your business practices is about creating efficiencies and optimizing your processes. But really, to understand that in the prism of the customer experience explains a lot to us. So I'm going to share some of the highlights of what they are and what that package delivered and some of the expectations from it. And even during that time, some of the changing landscape in that period as well, which shifted some of our focus basically based on the one-stop shop program that was set up by SEI, which guided us in particular directions as well, but also gave us a massive boost in terms of developing profile, marketing, customer base, and so forth. So why is the customer experience so important is probably a good place to start. Well, aside from the obvious that you want to create a good experience for your customer and ultimately a good quality retrofit, there are other ancillary and very important benefits to creating a good customer experience. Well, number one, we have to do 500,000 homes in Ireland to B2 standards over the next 10 years or less, as it happens now. So customer experience and how they feel about that and reputation is incredibly important. Likewise, if you want to build up, and one of the pinch points or large pinch points that we raised earlier on is how do you find enough contractors, professionals as well to cater to this growing demand based on increased grants, marketing, and so forth. So the customer experience then is one, I suppose, in the context of optimizing your businesses, making it easier for contractors, making it easier for your staff retention, acquisition, and empowerment as well, so that customer experience is wrapped together into a better service. And ultimately, it's going to bring more people on, and it's going to create momentum as the program develops. So we spent a lot of time trying to codify our existing practices. So we have an experience in the one-stop shop approach, which predates the program. We looked at developing it a long time before it became even known as a one-stop shop. So we have a lot of experience in that. So what we're trying to do is piece together a lot of those experiences in customer delivery into one that is, in the words of the SEI's program, seamless. Okay. So we're going to look at a couple of slides, and I suppose from one extent we're going to look at all the component parts of that. And retrofit is complicated. It is ultimately, when you talk about a whole house, a deep retrofit, you're talking about a construction project. But I suppose the onus of the one-stop shop is to provide a level of supports that would be generally in excess of what would be provided when building a new home, for instance, or an extension, or so forth. So in a complicated process, there's a real there's a challenge in standardizing the approach, while at the same time building one around that, I suppose, accepts the facts that each project is unique and there's a huge amount of flexibility and bespokeness to each project as well. So another important, I suppose, consideration when we talk about the customer experience as well is, and business optimization, is to deliver retrofit at a reasonable cost. It doesn't cost professional fees any more than they need to be for the customer, and again makes the cost of delivering a retrofit much more affordable from the point of view of the project deliverer and also for the customer as well. So this is the project journey. We're going to touch on this a few times today, but it really shows the component parts of a whole house or a retrofit delivery. What we need to do essentially is tie these together in a seamless fashion. Now that's not seamless for ourselves because we can see the cut-off points from one to the next. So we got to do the survey, we got to do advocacy, we got to market, we got to acquire homeowners and customers. Contractor selection and project management, we need tender processes that are efficient and deliver good value for the customer. And all of these other elements, the whole way through to SEI grant funding and inspection regime, which is, I suppose, probably the highest threshold of inspections of most programs in the country. But we need to create for the customer the experience of seamlessness, while at the same time making sure that we do all of these components efficiently within the company. So we'll go to the next slide there, Anna, please. So some of the actions of the work package there. So an analysis of our current practices and processes, which was ongoing, and a business practice review, how we were doing things, was it sufficient, was it the right direction? Once we had consolidated that, we're really going to move on, and I suppose the latter theme of the presentation today is some of those IT solutions, so how we codify those processes using much more developed software, moving away from analog into something which is, I suppose, can deliver scale, ultimately, which is what we're trying to do here. With a view to optimizing and ultimately shortening the customer journey. which for one that is currently long or has been historically long to one which is much shorter, while understanding there's a massive difference between different types of retrofit projects. And I'm going to maybe just elaborate on the next slide about the conceptual sort of apparatus that we have to understand the retrofit, energy upgrade, and the type of customer motivations, and ultimately the type of customer experience that the customer is looking for based on their project. So we spent a lot of work, and our market knowledge, the customer knowledge is huge, built up over many years, as to what is retrofit and what type of projects and customers exist within that spectrum. And our heritage will be in whole house, and whole house, I suppose a lot of people would understand as deep retrofit. So these are typically expensive projects. People need to move out of their homes for a period of time, and the grant supports are there, but the level of commitment financially is still huge for the homeowner. And on the right hand side, you can see how we've distinguished between the homeowner house profile and the customer, usually by house type. As Evelyn relayed earlier on, we can market to what we call heat pump plus differently, because they're typically houses which are much more modern. They require much less upgrades. The cost of providing a retrofit solution might be somewhere in the region of 25,000 as opposed to 90,000. The grants might be 50% of that, so the net fee or the net cost themselves might be 12, 15,000 as opposed to 40, 50,000. That has a consequence down in terms of providing finance solutions. That might be very attractive for someone to have 50% grant funded and 50% finance. And we need to approach them in a different way than we do for the whole house. Likewise for consultancy projects, which are typically much larger projects, where someone has been considering this for years, where the energy upgrade is a component of their project, but it is only a component and not the main driver or motivator. And so ultimately what we're looking at there is a unique customer journey based on the type of project and the motivations of the customer involved. So when we look to codify these business practices and improve on them, and I suppose optimizing the extent that we can turn this project more quickly in keeping with the type of project profile that is there, we started off with our ERP system. So essentially carried out a load of workshops involving the whole management team, which had a massive input the whole way through, and in that development to develop a vision statement for what that is, and initiatives identified in that were organizational mapping, and analysis of existing procedures and practices, and I suppose how we would view the ERP in such a fashion that we could bring in external surveyors, we could bring in contractors, make them part of it, and create that seamless experience for the contractor and surveyor and the external agents also. And ultimately, I suppose, to reduce the cost of retrofit per home, and ultimately to reduce the amount of non-engineering work for engineers so that they can focus on their prime responsibility, less to do paperwork and so forth. Good. So you can see our ERP and where it sits on the system. ERP describes the apparatus. Our most advanced component of that is the CRM. That's currently used by our sales team, marketing team, and that's contact and account creation. Our contractor app will allow contractors to feed in their prices, their tenders, view the process themselves, look at the milestones, and the retrofit engine I'll talk about in a moment. We have a document management system for whole house and deep retrofit. There's a huge amount of information, data, and photos that are required for that, and that management system is a key component, and a central system for projects are mastered here. So this is a key part of the retrofit engine. So we have a lot of people who are inquiring. We have somewhere in the region of 10,000 applications per year, and we need to provide a service to each of those. And most people have a very low understanding of what their project will entail, what it will cost, what the grants will be. We are developing a retrofit engine which will give initial help to people who are looking for advice, return to them an initial assessment so they can get an idea whether the project is suitable, whether it's affordable for them. Feeds back into our CRM. The retrofit calculator that can be used by our engineering team to create home energy assessments, feeding into SEAI to an API so that we can gather their XML data and their BER data, so their previous assessment data, in order to turn out much more efficient reports, assessment, and introductory guidance for the homeowner. Ultimately, that's going to have a benefit in terms of surveying and the engineer, so that they can potentially in time use that on site, gather the measurements while they're there, feed that back into the system, and ultimately reduce the process, which could take somewhere in the region of 3 weeks from survey to energy report to almost instantaneous. So the retrofit engine is a key component of what we're planning to do, and it is probably the biggest opportunity for scale as part of our ERP. I mentioned standardization for engineers. So a series of workshops revealed some pinch points in terms of where people's time has been spent. I suppose one observation we had was that a lot of people were still using pen and paper, although we were following established processes, and ultimately our surveys and so forth were resulting in something which was recognizable between different types. The means to achieve that were different between engineer and department. So first and foremost, to move away from that, a cloud-based app, snagging apps, so that we can share the drawings, snagging the milestones and so forth with contractors between departments and between engineers instantaneously. And notifications, hugely important, not just for our engineering team, but also for the contractors and also for the homeowners, so they can receive automated updates in terms of where their project is at. We looked at standardization of contracts. So again, what I mentioned earlier on about particularly whole house being something which is we're trying to standardize, but we can do that within the context of a contract, but also introducing those unique aspects as well in terms of cost measures and so forth. A huge amount of work to bring that together to something which is scalable. A link finance system which can automatically generate purchase orders and payment plans and so forth. So these things are done automatically, reduce the amount of time spent within departments and outside of departments, chasing up paperwork and so forth. So on many levels, I suppose it's a basic next step in order to optimize the business processes, and it goes in tandem with the standardization of the engineering. Procurement solutions, you can see on the screen there. As I mentioned, the contractor app. A huge part of what we are trying to achieve in that seamless experience is coming from a heritage where we probably viewed ourselves more as the advocate of the customer, having now, I suppose, to come up with some way of delivering price quickly, okay, based on a wide range of contractors that are involved in our projects across all of the services. And so fixed pricing is a major part of that. And so we can do that with the new system, real-time price list, which will measure the last 10 jobs in the area, or last 10 similar jobs, come up with average prices, apply that then, going back to what I mentioned earlier on about our reporting and our initial assessments to customers, that we can then feed that into it. And the tendering process is usually reduced. And that was seen as a key feature of the development of that, the delivery process for a quotation and project visibility. So that every step in the process, not just for ourselves, but for the contractor and for the customer, is that they can see where their project is at. And all of this, once you bring it together, allows us to create and enforce and stand over SLA, service level agreements, which essentially is going to be, we will do X within this space of time, and then we'll be able to see over a period of time. Very important for the customer experience. They know exactly what they're going to get, when they're going to get it. You can deliver that according to the expectations, you can measure it, and over time, of course, you can improve on that, and you can set some KPIs in that regard. So in conclusion, this element of the this project, this work package, and the elements on the screen, I enjoyed the full support of the whole management team, the whole organisation developing it, external partners, and IT specialists recruited directly in order to facilitate and to build up these advances, and that ongoing commitment to improving data analysis, market knowledge, geo-targeting, and collaboration and partnerships with contractors and external surveyors and the industry in general. All wrapped around by our values on the right-hand side: integrity, customer-centric, quality, and innovation, inclusion. I'll add to that quality. All wrapped around, we empower our customers to achieve warmer, healthier, low-carbon homes. We're also looking, when we do that, is that we can create our staff, we create our external, we can help our surveyors and contractors to contribute, to empower them as well to contribute to the ultimate service delivery. Thanks.
Thank you, David. And now it's time for the last presentation of today. So I would like to introduce you to Janet Doyle. She's the head of finance at Electric Ireland Superhomes. She has over 18 years management experience in the private and non-profit sector. She has financially managed regional, national, and international projects, and she holds a primary degree in business, is a certified public accountant, along with holding qualifications in business coaching, operations management, governance in the charitable sector, and responsible and sustainable finance. So whenever you're ready, Janet, the floor is yours.
Okay, try to figure out how to put that on. Thanks very much for having us today. I'm going to go through how we are planning on maximising the potential of the Superhomes 2030 project. I'm going to start though and open and say that it's a very proud day for everyone in the Electric Ireland Superhomes team and all of our stakeholders and partners as well. You know, when I go through my presentation over the next couple of minutes, you'll see all the indicators we set out at the beginning of the project and see that we've met most of them and actually surpassed a lot of them as well. So it's incredibly proud. It's a proud moment for ourselves here today. So, and really what we want to do is we set around, and it's been, I suppose, spoken to a bit today around how it started as quite a small business unit a couple of years ago and has evolved, but it's really jumped in leaps and bounds, and it's a completely different organization in many ways, in many respects today than what it was a couple of years ago. However, it's kept a lot of those core very high values, and we speak to some of them in a moment, but I certainly feel that it's certainly evolved into something a lot more, and it's an every day, and I'm going to say this a little bit tongue-in-cheek, but every day is a prouder day to be part of the team for ourselves, because it is coming on in leaps and bounds, and we like to think that we are at the forefront of the industry in terms of rolling out best practice for one-stop shops in Ireland, and we've demonstrated that by our not only our market share but also our reputation and our delivery as well. Okay, if you don't mind, Irene, the next slide. Thank you. So what we wanted to do at the beginning was, and you know, it started off with a couple of people problem solving, and then it grew and grew and grew. But ultimately, we wanted to develop a long-term sustainable service. And we want to not only develop a long-term sustainable service, we want to develop a service that's going to be nationwide and continue on growing the market. So it's not just ourselves, it's a whole community delivering retrofits, deep retrofits, and helping develop that. And you know, we looked at different things, and I'll talk to each one of these different components in a few minutes. You know, I'll talk about the business planning and strategy, marketing, brand development. I'll talk about technical standards, delivery, customer journey, process optimization, and breaking down those barriers for customers. And certainly many of my colleagues today have spoken a lot more, you know, a lot more about them than I will. But ultimately, we decided that the best way to do this was to create and develop a customer-centric offering, because at the end of the day, the customer, it's all about the customer and all about delivering that. And how we do that, we wanted to build confidence in ourselves, in our brand, but also in the market itself, because we don't operate alone, we're all connected. And we also then, to do that, we realized that we had to develop support and enable growth within the market itself. So that's what a lot of our work has been around ourselves, but outside of ourselves as well, all those different stakeholders and how we approach them in our partnerships. So we wanted to overall, we wanted to expand the deep retrofit community, and we decided it was a community as opposed to, you know, you'd hear me using industry and community interchangeable, but really it's community. We're all connected. And I know Ireland is a small country, but it's a lot more than that to ourselves. You know, in a lot of ways, we take it personal. We're very, very proud of it. Or you don't mind going forward 2 steps? Thanks. Okay, so I'm going to start off by just talking about our strategy as well, because we have to start off somewhere. And we, you know, so obviously we started with a plan, And the key is always, and you know, we felt was about clarity. We're really clear about what we wanted to achieve, you know, clear about the opportunities, and our objectives were defined from day one. We then had to set about the proper and the most appropriate corporate structure had to be established, and that was established. We need this foundation to build on, because otherwise it's a little bit unshaky. Finance was secured for scale up. We agreed our roadmap for achievement. Finance and resource plans were developed, and control and risk management environment was agreed. I'm not going to go into them because, guys, I don't want to bore you all, okay? But just believe me, they were all there. And the key, we believe, to market acceptance was this clear vision, clear communication of all those items. So we had an approach was developed. So our marketing strategy was developed. We then moved on, and we said, well, structures and systems were developed all around developing confidence in our supply chain, you know, which is hugely important to ourselves. And if you don't mind moving on one more, please. Thank you. So Superhomes itself, and you know, this was spoken to a little bit earlier on today. It started off with Tipperary Energy Agency, and it's a really small business unit, and really great technical expertise. And there were some multiple contractors that been used, and it was using the one-stop shop model. But to grow and develop, we needed a lot more than that. You know, we needed to continue on working with that partnership model and look at items where we were a little bit more weak. And to do that, obviously, we moved to talking with Electric Ireland. Electric Ireland is the largest utility in Ireland and has 1.2 retail customers across Ireland and UK. Huge expertise around brand and scaling, operating at scale. So it was a natural collaboration. Both enhanced each other, both entities, and they came together. You know, so Electric Ireland want clean energy. They're focusing on decarbonising heat. Exactly all the items that we're holding true for Tipperary Energy Agency under the business unit, Superhomes. So they came together and created this, and I've spoke to already. We're a new entity in many ways, new organisation, Electric Ireland Superhomes. And moving on to the idea that we created a target or a new plan. The target was 35,000 homes by 2030. That's bigger than the Horizon 2020 project that we were looking at, because the Horizon 2020 project is absolutely a fantastic project. Let's be more ambitious than that. Let's look at continuing our growth and continuing on a sustainable business after the 3-year project, which is a fantastic starting point. Or you don't mind moving on. Okay, so to look at one of our objectives, it was like we said, well, look, we want to develop Electric Ireland Superhomes approach as a trusted model. We wanted, to trust in the deep retrofit market with a minimum 600 completions by the end of 2023. And we certainly have delivered that. We said, well, you know, how do we prove that to ourselves? What are indicators that we're going in the right direction? We said, we'll start off, a one-stop shop is established, which provides services and advice to the value chain. You note I don't say just the customers, because we're all connected within the value chain itself. And we really believe that we've done that. We're starting with our network of our one-stop shop shops, and we're hoping to continue on building that. We want to cater for the needs of customers, contractors, other professionals, all our stakeholders within within the industry. We said we wanted to grow our technical and support staff. We've certainly grown. We had approximately 10 staff to begin with, you know, give or take. We had about 10. We have now nearly 50 staff, and we will have a lot more than that. And our staff numbers are growing and growing, and you'll see that a lot more within the next couple of years when we start passing the 100 and 200 mark, because that's where we're going. Our ambition is quite high here, and we can see it growing steadily. And that's in the background of a lot of skill shortages in Ireland. So that'll show you that evidence the work and the commitment of our team to continue to grow. We've increased awareness, trust, and engagement with the brand across all communication channels. I think one of the KPIs was to increase our efforts by 50%. We've certainly a lot more than that now, and brand recognition and satisfaction is through the roof. And I think if Evelyn was here beside me and the rest of our marketing team, they'd be able to tell you some great pointers there. But we certainly have a lot of very high customer satisfaction rates, and we continue on using, because that's a good metrics for us to use. Are customers happy? Also, are contractors happy? But are our customers happy? And residential retrofit completions as per plan. We originally, business as usual model was around 60 to 80 retrofits per year at the beginning of this. Within 12 months, we passed the 100 retrofits per year mark. Within 24 months of this project, we surpassed 200 retrofits, and we're now on train by the end of this year to be over 500 with next year continuing to grow. So the aim of the project itself was to complete 3,000 retrofits per year. We will certainly, I can tell you, we will certainly do more than that by 2030. Okay, so we're meeting each of our targets and we're growing. So, you know, that's, and I don't say that lightly because a lot of work goes into every single one of those retrofits, especially when we're still developing a lot of our systems and a lot of our staff as well. I really don't mind moving to the next slide now. Okay, so you've seen this a couple of times today, so I feel like I'm but look, you know that we're all looking at the same thing. But one of the points earlier was, and I love the analogy that was used earlier of sending people off on a hike, and do we give them do they give them a roadmap, or do we go with them? We go more than the roadmap. We go more than just being their guide. We do so much more for them, and we like to say in many ways we hold their hand or we stay with them. And one of the key ones then is that we have us as a one-stop shop have a direct contract with our customer, and we're their advisor, we're their product designer, we're their project manager. In many ways, we're their agony aunt or their shoulder to cry on, but we're so much more. And it's nearly a personal relationship that's built up there. We do a lot more. And David certainly mentioned about a lot of things that happen in the background, but from the customer's point of view, they don't need to see all those, the busyness that happens in the background. They just need to know they can trust us. We give them the right information and we stay with them. So education and support is huge for ourselves, and we always start that off with the consumer. We move it on, we do a rigorous home survey. So again, more opportunity to inform our customers and give them more credible information. We design their retrofit tender. We pick the best contractors to use for them, the most appropriate ones for their house, and we stay with them. And we project manage. We make sure the quality assurance is high. We do many different checks too, and they meet a lot of high standards. It's not in terms of a regulator. I'll talk about that in a few minutes, but also our own high quality assurance. And during a period of growth, that's quite a difficult one to achieve. And we certainly feel that we're managing it. And we manage the grant paperwork, again, to remove the headache from the customers. So the customer doesn't see any of that. We deal with it all for them. And we've started, and Jill has spoken at length around the secure and affordable finance for our customers. And I'll speak about that again. So that's really supporting them, breaking down those barriers. So barrier in terms of information, how confusing it can be. Barriers in terms of getting the right tradespeople and it being delivered correctly. Barriers in terms of queries around quality and is it the correct way to do it. Barriers in terms of finance and how they're going to afford it. And we look at the customer journey and we have contract with them, stay with them from the very beginning all the way through until they actually have what we would call a super home. Okay, so Irene, you don't mind going on a little bit? So, you know, at this point, we've covered our plan and we're looking at, you know, well, what else are we going to do? We have our plan, we've decided what our offering is, but who are we? And that's where we said, so who are we, where are we going to go? And we then had to say, well, what's our driving force? What are we passionate about? And from there, we decided, you know, we need to create a vision statement, but to do that, we have a couple of different points along the line. We have to start critically analysing the market itself and saying, well, you know, what's our engagement with the current offering? What else is done in the market? How is it done? How is it done in Ireland? How is it done across Europe? And where are we going to start from? We looked at all different things such as social economics, financial, technical factors, and they were all brought into it. And then we decided, look, Superhomes community, I've mentioned already, was really, really important to ourselves. And this is the idea. We had to then decide, well, how are we going to build and enhance our communication and our engagement strategies? Because it's very much how is it going to be seen and how are we going to develop that out. And one of the things we, you know, has been mentioned about the knowledge, but all the fantastic stuff that Evelyn covered earlier on as well. And we wanted to not like look at it, building our customers' awareness and educating them, but we need to go further than that. And that's a big thing. We need to do a lot more than that. And we are certainly focusing on that. And that's our contractors engagements and other SMEs in the market as well. So, and to do that, the reason for that is we need to complete those retrofits. So we need to bring them along with us as well. There's no, we can't have a lot of demand and interested customers without having the people to do it as well and to deliver it. So we want to ensure those retrofits are completed. And that's what I'm talking about is market mobilization. How are we going to mobilize the market? And then how is the industry going to develop? Because it's quite big and we need to keep on growing it. You don't mind this slide. Thank you. So Our core purpose, what's our driving force? Click again there, please. Thanks. We empower our customers, and you've heard David speaking a lot about empowerment, and that's what this is all about, I think. And if we're going to be looking at the one-stop shop or the deep retrofit industry, all the stakeholders have to be empowered. So for ourselves, we empower our customers to achieve a warmer, healthier, low-carbon home. And that's hugely important, and each one of those items are hugely important for ourselves. And our values on the next slide, and David's mentioned these already. Yeah, is integrity, customer-centric, quality, innovation, and inclusion. So we've now decided and we've now mapped out what are we going to do, who are we, what's our actual driving force. And so then my next one, you'll see on my next two slides, you'll be moving through and saying, well, what is it? Like, what is it that we actually do? So at this stage, we're starting off with the plan, who we are, and we're moving it down further and further into how we're going to build out the sustainable business. So we started looking at our technical stands and delivery and partnership development. And really what that's asking is, what is needed to deliver consistently? And Stephen Murphy spoke quite a lot about this today, which was absolutely fantastic. Huge amount of work went into this. It's looking at we know that high quality and standardization is the key to continue on scaling and delivering. Knowledge transfer and upscaling is going to continue as well. And the best way we believed was to approach that was through partnerships and building out those collaborations and working with others. So on my next slide, we set out an objective, and the objective was to ensure that Electric Ireland Superhomes adopt and implement best practice solutions. And we've heard best practice mentioned already today, and technologies in line with innovation in technology and processes as well. And the big item here is we say, well, you know, what's appropriate for deep retrofits, and that keeps changing because the industry keeps changing and technology keeps moving and they keep on being developed. So we set out standards and best practice to ensure procedures to ensure that they continue to be developed and applied, and we need to keep looking at that. We need to continue on developing. We need to be at the forefront here, in the forefront of technological innovation. And the reason I say that is, we need to optimize the technical design solutions. So, you know, those MZEPs, the retrofits, but also we need to provide cost-effective and market-ready solutions for our customers to continue on. To continue on trusting ourselves. So our indicators, we said, was, you know, we need guideline for best practice standards and solutions. It's certainly working on. We would certainly, if we saw unique users for the Electric Ireland Knowledge Hub portal on our website, about 1,000 of them, that would be a good indicator. We're getting a huge amount of leads. David, I think you mentioned over 10,000 leads per year, which is absolutely fantastic, and training of 200 contractors or SME staff. That's been surpassed, that training, and that was certainly in collaboration with our other partners. We've met that, and we put that up as a huge indicator because we need to continue and develop and deliver appropriate training to our contractors and our customers and our other stakeholders. That's key. We can't just stop it at month 36. It needs to continue on and continue on. And the reason I say that is because, again, we need to be focused on expanding our deep retrofit community in Ireland. Again, it's about accelerating the engagement and investment and the implementation in it. And that brings me to the next slide. Another objective that we had at the beginning of the project was to develop a network of high-performing contractors across Ireland, supported by the Superhomes one-stop shop to deliver high-quality retrofits. And this is something, obviously, we take all of them really, really serious, but this is our delivery, and this is what we do. And we say, well, you know, contractors and SMEs working in the construction sector need to be enabled to engage in retrofits. We need to enable them, we need to empower them, we need to give them skills and the tools that they wanted. And we did this by, we assessed what their barriers were, what makes it difficult for them to do what is needed. And that was quite a large piece. And the opportunity, and it was a huge opportunity for SMEs to engage in the deep retrofit community itself. And we looked at then, well, what were our indicators there? So we'd scale the number of Electric Ireland Superhomes contractors from 40 to more than 80. We have more than 100 contractors that we're working with at the moment, and that number continues to grow. A lot of work has gone into developing them by our team. As you can imagine, they come to us at different stages of their own business development as well. We said we would train over 50 SMEs and 200 professionals and workers on Electric Ireland and Superhome standards. We'd surpassed that as well, we're delighted to say, and we'd have input as well into the National Standards Policy in Residential Deep Retrofit. We need to continue that, and we will continue that, and that's our commitment to that. And you know, and that brings me nicely to the next slide, which is certainly around our technical standards. So it's looking at support and enabling our contractors to develop and deliver those deep retrofits. We started off with, there was a technical analysis of the standards and capacity needs, and we moved more to then we moved on to technical standards and development, training programs, and deliver the training programs. Really what we're looking at, and one of the main things that have come out of them looking at the barriers for contractors, is that there needs to be, and even for ourselves and for everyone in the industry, is to actually look at our processes and make them more lean, the business processes themselves. The nature of deep retrofits can be a little bit fragmented. There's lots of different moving parts, and how can we make that smooth, and how can we have the throughput and shorter cycle times going through all of those different stages, and it's seamless from the outside. You know, everyone's always heard of the analogy of the duck. It looks like it's, you know, a swan is gliding over the water, and underneath it's going really, really quick. There's a little bit of that happening. So we need, you know, we're going to continue on focusing on making underneath a little bit more smoothly as well. You know, so a lot of that processes, and that's for ourselves and all our other stakeholders, so people we're partnering with, and our delivery partners as well. And we need to start focusing on to deliver at scale, at industry looking at scale, that aggregation of deep retrofit projects. So how do we facilitate that? How do we look at bigger scale, moving on from single houses? And that moves me to my next slide. So it's the how. So how we've looked at our plan, we've looked at who we are, we've looked at what we do. How do we actually do it? And how do we do it for our customers? And how do we optimize their processes? Really, what I'm saying is, how do we increase our efficiencies to help our customers? And David covered a lot of this, so I'm going to hope I don't cover what you covered already. I hope to add a little bit of a slant to it, but it should be the same. So our objective, we want to expand our Electric Ireland Superhome solution regionally. We wanted to optimize the business processes to improve our efficiencies as well. And I'm going to speak to, and I've mentioned it already, you know, the deep retrofit projects, there's a fragmented nature there. And because of the nature of the buildings themselves and construction, there's going to be inefficiencies, and there's going to be high overheads. But we need to tackle that, and we need to tackle it as an industry. And that's that's a real, that's a difficult one, and it's something that we're always going to have to work on. And we certainly are focusing a lot of attention on it. So where the design thinking methodologies have been applied here to look at it and improve our performance and high performance projects to be delivered. We put a lot of time into this, and we're going to continue on doing it. So to bring in APIs, to bring in apps, to bring in lots of different solutions to support the delivery in the background for our customers, and also then to be able to keep them updated, and so that they know what's happening, on the customers updated to know what's happening on their projects, and each stakeholder to be updated as well, so that it's not just one person has all the information. Let's share information as it goes through, and let's automate as much as possible. Automating as much as possible will help efficiencies, it'll help drive down cost, but ultimately it'll allow us, the industry itself, to deliver more projects and deliver better to our customers, we believe. And that's going to be, so, you know, the one thing that we're going to say going forward is we're going to continue on growing, but we're going to look at better ways of growing and better ways of doing things. And that's something that we hold very, very close to our hearts. It's hugely important. So key indicators of success here, open and regional one-stop shop hubs, plus increased Electric Ireland Superhome staff resources delivering the one-stop shop service. Tick, we've done that, and we're delighted, and we're going to continue on doing that. Maintaining high levels of customer satisfaction rates from Electric Ireland Superhomes customers. We're doing that, and we're going to continue on monitoring, continue on working on it, and implement process solutions to reduce the customer journey time by a minimum of 10%. We've done that, and we're going to continue on, and we're going to keep on building on that and make sure. So I will not be standing here in 5 years' time telling you what the percentage will be, but I can tell you it'll be a lot more efficient than that. So delighted to say. So our customer journey, the customer journey itself and the business optimization, we did a couple of different things, and David focused more on this. It was the analysis of the customer processes we're looking at and continue to look at our business practice review and other IT solutions to support that, all with the aim of optimizing our customer journey itself. And how are we going to address that? Well, to continue it, we need to, or why are we going to do that? We need to increase confidence and trust in the Electric Ireland Superhomes brand and the industry itself. And to increase that trust and the confidence in the industry, we need to deliver very high quality, very efficient, very short cycle times for our customers. And so they know they get the right information all the way through. They feel empowered when they deal with the likes of our one-stop shop. Okay, so we want our customers, when they deal with ourselves, deal with Electric Ireland Superhomes, to be empowered. We want our stakeholders, we want our contractors, when they work with ourselves, to feel empowered to deliver. So it's all about empowering the industry, and to do that we need to look at new solutions to support that. So my next slide then will give you, so we put together, not only do we have a mission statement for the company, we actually have created a design process vision statement as well, because this is how important this is for ourselves. We said we design and build an integrated connected system that empowers users to track and support our customer retrofit journey through efficient processes, enabling superior performance and growth. It's a little bit of a mouthful, but it's really important to ourselves. And we put that together and really speaking to the need for increased quality and quantity of contractors and SMEs in the organisation, in the industry itself, and that they're qualified to deliver and operate at scale and move with us. We wanted to develop scale-up strategies, so increasing staff, decreasing inefficiencies, supporting contractors, etc. And we wanted to also then continue to develop a business which expands the current customer offering. So like at the beginning of this project, there were one-off single family dwellings is what we were working on. And we're going to continue that, but we want to scale even further. We want to start looking at those local authorities, multiple projects with multiple dwellings in them, and to grow it further. And working with landlords and local authorities, social housing across Ireland. And that's something that'll evolve with time, and we've certainly started to move into that. And to meet those bigger numbers, we need to start thinking bigger. And that's and to do that, we need to figure out more efficient ways of working. But we certainly are on track to do that. So move to the next slide. That's a lot about ourselves. But I mentioned, and I continue on saying, the customer-centric approach. So what are the key barriers for our customers? How are we going to unlock that? I've mentioned it already about information that's empower them. But what are our big things here? So if we take the customer-centric approach, we will need to continue to analyse and develop strategies to assist our customers to manage those key barriers for domestic retrofits. And you can see, and Jill, I'm sorry, we're on train here in terms of our it speaks to our collaboration. Key barriers for customers. We said that, you know, some of them trusted advisors, confusing information, a lot of disruption, spending priorities. But the big one that we addressed with this project, and we're addressing each of them, but the one I'm going to highlight today is around that cost of the retrofit itself. The cost of retrofit, and it's an upfront investment for customers. We know there's a payback period, but customers have to pay it beforehand, and then they get the payback period throughout the reduced cost of running their home. So on the next slide, you'll see, what did we do here and how did we deal with this? We are still promoting a partnership model. We're helping our customers breaking down their key barriers. And we've done this in a couple of different ways. First of all, we said, well, look, you know, we registered with SAI, so that's Sustainable Energy Association in Ireland, one-stop shop scheme. We registered with them, and that was to have customers access government grant funding for residential retrofits. They're very, I suppose they're quite good, generous grants there for customers, and that's one way of reducing down the cost for a customer. We pre-finance the grants, so the customer only pays the net amount, and you know we would pay the contractor and then claim back the grant. So that's a large barrier overhead. It doesn't cover all the costs, but it certainly helps them, and we deal with all the paperwork as well. And it also brings in that confidence and trust as well, because to become a registered SAI one-stop shop, the bar is set very, very high now. So this process started, and Evelyn mentioned already, it was last year, it came into effect. It's highly regulated now, and we see that as a good thing because it promotes credibility across the market itself, and it makes sure that any customer, obviously we want them to be our customers, but any customer going to a one-stop shop in Ireland knows that we all meet the same minimum criteria and we're all regulated. So this is very good for the market itself. And along with that goes, and along with that support of the credibility and the quality assurance, is also then those very generous grant systems. And we went one step further. We said, well, you know, the retrofit, the cost of the retrofit is so big. There is another piece there. There's the grant piece that helps them. But what happens with the net amount that they have to cover? And we did that, and Jill spoke to them. We spoke to many different lenders, finance lenders, and we looked at how we're going to partner. And what was identified very quick is, you know, they need to have access to low cost loans, so and green loans, and easy access routes. So the process was the key thing for our customers, and that's a key barrier because there's lots of confusing information around, and then you're adding in confusing about loans. How am I going to finance this? We know a lot of our customers have their own money that they would, you know. Okay, can everyone see me? Yes. I hope so. Okay. That looks at you, Jill. That's no problem.
Now we can hear you. Yeah, it's hear me. These things happen. So
the idea is that we partnership with them, but we're really focusing on educating and raising awareness for our not only finance as well. And we've seen a huge evolution there since the beginning of the project when we started talking, and there wasn't a huge amount of appetite we encountered at the beginning of the project, and certainly towards the end, we've seen a large appetite by finance to get into this space. And a lot of them have their own KPIs, but certainly it's hugely important. So on the next slide, and I'm nearly there, guys. On the next slide, so what was that we did, and it's and Jim has spoken about this now. I won't go into big, a lot of information here on it. We want to design and pilot an innovative, deep retrofit solution, which was a big thing, and we've cited already. We know that it's a big barrier for customers. To address this by researching and designing an electric Ireland Superhomes finance solution, which takes advantage of the current the current policies and initiatives that are available at the moment. The pilot is still running at the moment. It's slow to take off, but certainly is moving. So we're delighted when we say that there's a big tick that the pilot is in place at the moment, and we're still at that learning and development stage with this piece. But it is working, and it's easy access for our customers. Okay, so the next slide, don't mind. So this is my last slide, and it's just to say, our strategy going forward will continue to focus on each one of those items. So each piece of our puzzle, or each piece of this project, will continue long term, and we believe that it is the right way to go to create our long term commercial sustainable business. And it'll allow us to develop our scale. Each piece looks at different parts of the same electric Ireland Superhomes offering, and it keeps our customers at the centre of it. So I have to say, and I'll say it again, it's a proud moment to be sitting on the Electric Ireland Superhomes team, and we're looking forward to the next couple of years, and we're very grateful to have this project to start. Thank you.
So yeah, unfortunately, we won't have time for the Q&A because everyone went over time, but it's fine because today we are celebrating the project. So I want to invite just one last time the project coordinator, Fiona, to close this meeting. So please, Fiona.
Hello, I won't keep you from your lunch. I just want to say, reiterate Janet's words of how proud everybody who is part of this project team is, how amazing it has been. And I think just the one takeaway, because I want to be short and sweet, is that customer is at the heart of all of this, and how customer centric this has been, and how this has actually, driven this project. And just say thanks very much for all of the presenters, and also to Zhao, Guillaume and Adrian for sharing their insights with us, and Daniela for being an amazing support to the team, and Irene for your moderating and organising and setting up. Thank you very much. But I think it's just pride and customer centric and community are the three takeaways for me. Thank you.
And now before we close, I know Stephen
wants
to say something. So I think it's
just to say, to reiterate what Fiona says, just for the people online, Stephen O'Connor, I'm CEO of Electric Ireland Superhomes. Firstly, thanks to Thomas, thanks to everybody here, Irene and the team for hosting us here today in Brussels. That was great. Thanks to the other speakers who I think gave some great context, speaks from the Commission. We got context around the renovation wave, social housing, the cities, the consumer aspects. I think that just gave us all the context in which we're working. This project has gone on for 3 years. Electric Ireland Superhomes, we're here, but TEA is our partner, the European Heat Pump Association, TUS on the academic side, and Sustainability Works and ESB. So we've got great partners, plus the Commission as our funder, and it's great to have Daniela represented here. Our team, Evelyn, David and Janet, have outlined the progress we've made over the 3 years. We talked about the next 3 years, scale, standardization, digitization. We need to grow demand, but we also need to match supply with demand. And we will undertake to everybody here and online, we'll check back in with this community of practice over the next 3 years and let everybody know how things are going. And if we can help other people who are trying to do similar projects in other member states, we'd be delighted to do that. Thank you.
That's lovely. Thank you very much, Stephen, for these last words. And now, it's time to actually close the meeting. I hope it was valuable for the audience that was connected. As I said, we will share the recording and we will share the slides in the next days. And I want to wish you all a great rest of the day. And let's see what the future brings to Superhomes. Take care. Okay, bye-bye.